Obito rewrites Naruto, duel Kamui to save Rin. Welcome funds. Enjoy exclusive audiobook experiences right here. Check out my website for more episodes and audiobooks. Links are in the description. Episode 21. Joining the Roots isn't so easy either. Konoha, Hokage Building. The Hokage's office. The third Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, held several intelligence reports recently delivered by the Anbu, his expression grave. The third case cage has disappeared? Sanagakure is using the entire nation's resources to search for him. Over there in Kumogakure, things are getting restless. They're amassing a large force on the border. We've discovered movements from Iwagakure over Kusagakure. The hidden mist village, which had long been secluded, is gradually becoming more active. Hiruzen Sarutobi sighed heavily, picked up his pipe, took a puff, left his seat, and went to the window. He stood with his hands behind his back, gazing at the portraits of the first and second Hokage on the Hokage rock in the distance, muttering to himself, "Teacher, war is about to begin, but Konoha is gradually declining. Will I still be able to fulfill your and the first Hokage's ideals?" Hiruzen Sarutobi gradually felt that as he aged, his physical functions were declining. After a long while, he calmed himself down and summoned a member of the Secret Service. "Any trouble with the Ninja Academy graduates?" The Anbu member wearing a monkey head mask knelt and reported, "Hokage-sama, everything is proceeding smoothly." Hiruzen Sarutobi nodded. "Pass the word down. Time is running out. Try your best to help the graduates grow." After thinking for a moment, Hiruzen Sarutobi added, "By the way, send some more people to the borders of the Land of Fire. If that's not enough, release some criminals from Konoha prison and let them atone for their crimes." After making the arrangements, Hiruzen Sarutobi waved his hand and said, "Go and handle it." The member of the Secret Service responded and used the instantaneous movement technique to leave. At that moment, hurried footsteps echoed down the corridor leading to the Hokage's office. Soon, Danzo Shimura broke in with two Root members. "Hiruzen, the war is about to begin, and I need manpower, a lot of manpower." Danzo got straight to the point, stating his demands. Hiruzen Sarutobi pondered for a moment. "You handle the negotiations with the major families yourself. The orphanage has recently welcomed another batch of children." Danzo Shimura slammed his hand on the table. "Hiruzen, the major families have already provided quite a few people in recent years. They can't possibly send more to the root. As for the orphanage, HMPH, how many are worth training?" Hiruzen Sarutobi, unhurried and deliberate, slowly said, "Konoha only has this many people. What else do you want to do?" Danzo Shimura said, "The Ninja Academy just graduated a new batch of students. Give me those from simpler families, and I guarantee that in a few years, they'll become Konoha's sharpest weapon." Hiruzen Sarutobi frowned. "Danzo, you know this is impossible. They are the new sprouts of Konoha, inheriting the will of fire. They must not enter the darkness of Konoha." Danzo Shimura sneered. "Special times call for special measures. Konoha is weaker than ever before. Can you guarantee those other villages won't turn around and attack Konoha together?" Hiruzen Sarutobi roared in anger. "You know we're incredibly weak, so whose fault is this? If Sakumo hadn't died, the situation wouldn't have become this tense." Danzo snorted. "Who knew your Anbu Captain General had such poor mental fortitude? Besides, you know perfectly well what really happened back then." Hiruzen Sarutobi sighed, thinking to himself, "Sakumo, was I really wrong?" He hesitated for a moment, then softened his tone. "Fine, you can recruit genin who graduated from commoner classes, but you must guarantee it's voluntary." Danzo was not satisfied. "These few commoners are hardly fit for important tasks." Hiruzen Sarutobi retorted, "Do you perhaps want the elite class too? If you want it, I'll give it all to you, but I won't be responsible for anything that happens." Danzo Shimura was somewhat tempted, but after considering it, he gave up. "Hiruzen, you underestimate me. Everything I've done is for Konoha's sake. I won't do anything that undermines unity. But it's also true that we're short-staffed. We need to add one more." Hiruzen Sarutobi knew the main event was about to begin. He knew best what his old friend was planning. "Tell me, who do you really want?" Danzo Shimura slowly said. "Kakashi Hatake, the son of White Fang, has few entanglements and possesses unparalleled talent. I guarantee I can train him into a second blade of Konoha." Hiruzen Sarutobi, not expecting Danzo to have such a plan, immediately spoke up. "Kakashi, don't even think about it. He's my chosen one. He's fully absorbed the will of fire, and I will never let him come into contact with darkness." After a pause, Hiruzen Sarutobi continued, "All right then, this year's top graduate, Obito Uchiha. Although he was born into the Uchiha clan, he's an orphan and doesn't have deep ties to the Uchiha. I can talk to him about joining Root." Danzo Shimura's face immediately darkened. Obito Uchiha, with his mastery of the 3 body techniques and the theoretical knowledge of the 10th master, has become this year's top graduate. Despite being an Uchiha, he can't use fire release ninjutsu, doesn't awaken his Sharingan, and while his taijutsu skills are decent, they're limited to Ninja Academy battles. What use is such taijutsu against stronger opponents? He's not even an Uchiha, he's no different from an ordinary person. Recruiting him into Root would only lead to accountability from the evil Uchiha clans. It's not worth it. Hiruzen, do I look like a fool to you? Hiruzen Sarutobi pretended to be someone who had done his best. You don't even want the top student in the elite class? Then figure out your own way. Danzo squinted. Hiruzen, Kakashi, you really won't give it to me? Hiruzen Sarutobi slowly turned around. Danzo, I am the Hokage. Hiruzen, you'll regret this. Bang! Danzo Shimura knocked heavily on the door and left the Hokage's office with a dark expression. Meanwhile, Obito Uchiha was unaware of what was happening in the Hokage's office. If he had known, he would have actually wanted to join the Roots. During his 4 years at the Ninja Academy, he diligently studied various theoretical knowledge and honed his basic skills to perfection. There are 2 purposes to doing this. First, all the prerequisites for learning the Flying Thunder God technique must be met. As the possessor of the Mangekyou Sharingan, which allows for spatial manipulation, Obito had the unique advantage of being able to learn the Flying Thunder God technique. The reason he couldn't learn it in his previous life was simply because his basic skills were lacking. Therefore, at the Ninja Academy, he diligently practiced the 3 body techniques and had already mastered them to a very high level. As his body has gradually developed and his basic skills have improved over the past few years, he is much stronger than when he was first reborn. Without using the kaleidoscope, he should have already firmly reached the level of an ordinary shadow. If he were to learn the Flying Thunder God technique, he would be the most troublesome among ordinary Kage, given that he could use holofication with just 3 tomo in his normal state, combined with the mobility of the Flying Thunder God technique. In addition to learning the Flying Thunder God technique and acquiring a wealth of knowledge, it also lays the foundation for future interstitial cell transplantation. The Third Shinobi World War was about to begin. Rin's death, Nagato's downfall, and the formation of the Second Akatsuki all occurred during that period. If Obito wants to change all of this, he must go to many places, meet many people, and do many things. This relies heavily on Kamui's abilities. Therefore, addressing the side effects of the Mangekyou Sharingan has become a top priority. To resolve the side effects of the Mangekyou Sharingan, in the absence of a blood relative who has also awakened the Mangekyou Sharingan, the only solution is to transplant Hashirama cells. However, transplanting Hashirama cells is not such a simple matter. In his previous life, Madara and White Zetsu did everything for him. In this life, given that he is temporarily unable to leave the village, he is more inclined to seek cooperation with Danzo and Orochimaru. At this point, the 2 had already begun their wood release experiments, killing a large number of Senju clan members, and finally creating a successful experimental subject, Yamato. They have both raw materials and detailed experimental data, but simply obtaining the information isn't enough. You also need to understand it and know how to use it. This requires extensive knowledge. Fortunately, this knowledge is covered in ninja schools. While the Ninja Academy keeps advanced ninjutsu secret, it is unusually open to other scientific and technological knowledge that may seem unrelated to ninjas, including biology. The range of topics is incredibly diverse and comprehensive. Therefore, Obito learned as much as the Ninja Academy taught, accepting all comers without expecting him to be an expert in every subject, but rather to have a solid foundation. He's no longer the bottom of the class he was in his previous life. He's now a top student in Konoha. After graduating today, his next plan is to transplant interstitial cells. So if Danzo were to invite him to join the Root group at this time, he would actually agree. Joining the Root organization means having the advantage of proximity, allowing access to first-hand information about the wood release experiments. Unfortunately, joining Root wasn't easy. Danzo simply didn't think much of an ordinary, unskilled Uchiha. Episode 22 Itachi will be very filial in the future. After leaving the Ninja Academy, Obito's mind was preoccupied with the matter of Hashirama's cells. Although he was unaware of the conversation taking place in the Hokage building on the other side, he was also unaware that Danzo had rejected him so decisively. But he also had his own plans. Making contact with Danzo and Orochimaru is not a difficult task. Using his public identity is definitely not an option, so it's time for the masked man to make his appearance, after using the alias he's held for over a decade in his previous life. However, that's a story for another time. Today, Rin organized a graduation event, and we agreed to have dinner at the Akamichi family's barbecue restaurant tonight. A lot of people will be coming, not only classmates but also Kakashi, that guy who's been a ninja for 4 years. Although Obito wasn't enthusiastic about such activities, Rin was the initiator, so there was no way he could refuse to go. However, since he was the top student and the first to take the exam, and there was still some time before all the other students finished, he could take advantage of this time to resolve his own issues with the Uchiha clan and, incidentally, ask the Uchiha clan for some benefits. And so, Obito arrived at the Uchiha clan's territory. 2 Uchiha clansmen were already waiting there. Upon seeing Obito's headband, they instantly teleported to his side. Obito, the clan chief ordered me to go see him. The 2 men were arrogant, and the one who spoke was even less than friendly. It was more of an order than an invitation. Obito frowned slightly. This is why he disliked most of the Uchiha clan. He always acts all high and mighty, and despite his pride, as a member of the Uchiha clan, he was actually quite proud in his past life. But pride is not the same as arrogance, much less arrogance in the face of the weak. If you're so capable, why don't you try talking to Hiruzen Sarutobi and Danzo Shimura with that attitude? In his past life, every time he came to the Uchiha clan, he only saw a bunch of useless people pretending to be leaders behind closed doors. They were suppressed to this extent, and all they knew how to do all day was plot and scheme. They plotted for a long time, but it was all for nothing. Thinking this through, Obito didn't bother to argue further, and simply said coldly, "Lead the way." The 2 Uchiha were taken aback. Obito was humble and kind to others, which made him stand out from the Uchiha, so they disliked this outcast. But at this moment, Obito suddenly became aloof, which actually made him seem a bit like one of them. The 2 didn't say much, concealing some of their presence, and managed to safely bring Obito to the clan head's house. At this moment, Fugaku Uchiha, who had received the news early on, was already sitting in the reception room making tea. In the past, this kind of thing was handled by Uchiha Makoto, but she was busy playing with the baby in her arms and couldn't free herself, so the clan leader had to take care of it herself. Upon seeing Obito arrive, he waved, his clan leader's authority undiminished, his expression still aloof, but much better than the 2 who had been so arrogant before. "Obito, come here, sit down. I have something to tell you." Seeing this, Obito didn't object, but walked over and sat down in front of the 2. Obito wasn't surprised by this meeting. A similar incident had occurred in his previous life. However, in his previous life, Fugaku had delivered some money and some Uchiha clan ninjutsu to his home. In this life, they simply invited him to the clan chief's residence for tea. Perhaps it's because of their different identities. In his past life he was the worst student, but in this life he's the top student. The reason why Fugaku did this is also very simple. The class assignments for Ninja Academy graduates were actually decided well in advance. Fugaku had already received information that he had been assigned to Minato's team. Minato-sensei was always one of Fugaku's most promising talents. Furthermore, Uchiha Makoto, the clan leader's wife, had long been close friends with Kushina, providing a foundation for their goodwill and friendship. With the Third Shinobi World War, the Yellow Flash rose to fame, and Fugaku placed all his hopes on Minato-sensei. It must be said that this clan leader actually won his gamble. If he hadn't later unleashed the Nine Tails attack, killing the 4th Hokage and his wife, the Uchiha clan might have truly been able to coexist peacefully with Konoha. But there are no what-ifs in life. Thinking of this, Obito's expression towards Fugaku was somewhat complicated, and he also glanced at the baby being held in Makoto Uchiha's arms. Seeing this, Fugaku introduced, "This is my son, Uchiha Itachi." "Obito, you like children too? I heard you're particularly kind to the elderly?" Obito nodded. "The old folks really like it. Every time I see those elderly people who have difficulty walking, I can't help but think of my grandma." After a pause, Obito continued, "As for your child, they seem very filial." Makoto Uchiha couldn't help but smile slightly. "Obito, you really are a kind-hearted child. Everyone praises Itachi, saying he'll become a strong ninja. Honestly, I'm tired of hearing that. Only you praised him for being filial." Makoto gently shook the ferret, extending a finger for it to grasp, teasing it. "Itachi, I only hope you grow up safe and sound, and that your family lives in harmony." Did you hear what Obito said? You must grow up to be a filial child. Cough cough cough. Obito couldn't help but cough violently, and quickly picked up the tea and took a sip. Seeing this, Fugaku Uchiha immediately said, "I'm sorry, Obito, I brought up something painful. As the clan leader, I am usually busy with official duties and have often been negligent. I didn't realize that the Uchiha clan had an orphan like you." It was my fault for not taking good care of you, so I want to make it up to you. Whether it's money or advanced Uchiha clan ninjutsu, just ask for whatever you need. Obito Uchiha sneered inwardly. So this clan leader also knew about his plight as an Uchiha orphan. Why didn't he compensate him earlier? The reason he's offering now is simply because he values Obito. He took a sip of tea and spoke slowly. Chieftain, I don't actually want to pretend to be grateful. From childhood to adulthood, my daily expenses have always been covered by my grandmother's and parents' inheritance, as well as financial support from my grandmother's friends, the grandparents. I have never received any favors from the Uchiha clan. Therefore, the Uchiha owes me nothing, and I owe the Uchiha nothing. Fugaku Uchiha's expression darkened, but at the same time, he was also somewhat surprised. Obito was far too calm in front of the clan leader. He was neither excited by the clan chief's summons nor resentful of the neglect or even exclusion he had experienced as a child. It seemed that nothing could disturb him. For a moment, Fugaku was at a loss for words. At this moment, Obito spoke up. However, since the clan chief wants to express his concern, mend the rift between us, and is offering me this benefit for free, I have no reason to refuse. I don't need the Uchiha clan's advanced ninjutsu. But I don't mind having more money. In fact, if you can muster the courage, I have many ways to help improve the Uchiha clan's situation in the village. Episode 23 Mangekyou Sharingan exposed. Fugaku was startled, then frowned. Obito, I don't know what you're talking about. Our Uchiha clan is the largest clan in Konoha, in charge of the police force, and possesses autonomy. Aside from the fact that it has never produced a Hokage since the village's founding, everything else about it is the best in Konoha. Fugaku's gaze grew increasingly sharp, and the sense of oppression intensified. Explain clearly, what aspects of our situation need to change? Obito remained calm. In fact, Fugaku was right. Compared to the Uchiha clan after the Nine Tails attack, the current Uchiha clan was indeed the #1 clan in Konoha. Not only do they enjoy a high degree of autonomy, but as one of the 2 largest founding families of Konoha, they are also widely respected and loved by the villagers. Even though some people were dissatisfied with the Uchiha clan due to issues such as law enforcement by the police department, they only dared to keep their dissatisfaction to themselves. When the Uchiha clan went out, they generally considered themselves superior to others, even more so than the Hyuga clan. It was precisely this sense of superiority that fueled their arrogance. However, after the Nine Tails rampage, the relationship between the Uchiha clan and the village quickly became strained. The root cause was that the fact that the Nine Tails was controlled by the Sharingan was clearly seen by the ninjas present at the time. These ninjas were a diverse group, ranging from powerful clans to commoners, basically representing most of the Konoha organization. Once the news spread, the Uchiha clan was naturally ostracized by everyone. The most distinctive characteristic of Konoha villagers is that they don't distinguish right from wrong and are prone to taking their anger out on others. According to rumors, Naruto Uzumaki, who was transformed from a fox demon, was the first target of the wrath, while the Uchiha clan became the second. This caused the Uchiha clan to completely lose popular support, and they were almost universally hated. Danzo was overjoyed. He had been looking for an excuse to suppress the Uchiha clan, and now this was it. The Tobarama Senju faction, a group of high-ranking officials in Konoha, were secretly plotting against the Uchiha clan, but they dared not bring it up openly. Now that things could be done openly, Danzo immediately became arrogant, resorting to all sorts of extreme measures, leaving the Uchiha clan feeling suffocated. The proud and arrogant Uchiha could not tolerate this, and most of them instantly turned into radicals led by Uchiha Setsuna. The growth of the radicals exacerbated the conflict between the Uchiha and the village, eventually leading to the point where they had no choice but to rebel. After reviewing the events surrounding the Uchiha clan, Obito had to admit that he bore primary responsibility for the Uchiha's annihilation. However, the fact that the Uchiha clan currently holds a very high position in Konoha does not mean that they are not being targeted by the higher-ups. Then, Obito slowly opened his mouth. Clan Chief Fugaku, everything you said is true, but the biggest problem for the Uchiha clan right now is that there are no Uchiha members in Konoha's upper echelons. Power is firmly controlled by Tobarama Senju's disciples, leading to the Uchiha being secretly marginalized by the higher-ups, isn't that right? The entire Konoha leadership dislikes the Uchiha clan. Their situation doesn't seem that great, does it? Fugaku Uchiha was shocked. How could Obito, a mere 9-year-old child, know so much information? He said sternly, who told you these divisive words? Have you already been in contact with the radicals? Who is behind you, the second elder or the fourth elder? Obito smiled faintly. Clan Chief Fugaku, you misunderstand. I have no one backing me. If I had to put it bluntly, the radicals of the Uchiha clan are, in my opinion, a bunch of useless fools. Besides shouting slogans loudly, they don't do a single thing of real work. Fugaku Uchiha frowned. He suddenly realized that Obito's way of thinking was not that of a child. This aroused some of his apprehension, but it also made him even more curious. Alright, I'll assume you have no one backing you for now. So tell me, how can the Uchiha's situation be improved? Obito glanced at Fugaku. The best solution would be to produce a Hokage. If someone from the Uchiha clan could become Hokage, all problems would be solved. But this won't be easy to achieve. The Konoha leadership will never allow this to happen unless there's a coup. But I don't think that's the outcome Chief Fugaku would want. Obito took a sip of tea and continued. As a second best option, if we can't produce a Hokage, then we can at least befriend one. As long as the Hokage is friendly to the Uchiha clan, the Uchiha's situation will improve significantly. Unfortunately, given the current situation, the most likely candidate to become the fourth Hokage has little to do with the Uchiha clan. Obito put down the tea. Now, Fugaku's interest in Obito began to swell slightly, because much of what Obito said was his own thought. However, simply recognizing the problem is not enough, Fugaku said slowly. Seeing a problem doesn't mean you can solve it. Many members of the Uchiha clan have seen this, but none of them have been able to come up with a good solution. What other options do you have? Obito Uchiha said. Actually, the solution is very simple. The conflict between the Uchiha and Konoha is limited to the higher-ups, and even among the higher-ups, the most threatening one is Danzo. Wouldn't it be simpler to just deal with Danzo? Smack! No sooner had Obito finished speaking than Fugaku Uchiha slammed his hand on the table and stood up. His eyes darted around, the three tomo swirling incessantly. He glanced left and right and only breathed a sigh of relief after confirming that no one was around. Then, he exuded a murderous aura and stared directly at Obito. In an instant, Obito sensed that the clan leader had cast a genjutsu on him, pulling him into a genjutsu space. Illusion space. Obito Uchiha was slightly surprised. This was no longer a simple three-tomo Sharingan genjutsu, but an ability that could only be evolved from the Mangekyou Sharingan. So it seems that Fugaku Uchiha did indeed awaken those eyes. Obito had suspected this in his previous life, and this incident directly confirmed it. Thinking this, he didn't resist, letting Fugaku pull him in completely. The Fugaku illusion space is filled with illusory colors. The two appeared here. Obito Uchiha's expression remained unchanged as he quietly watched Fugaku Uchiha. He smiled and said, "Clan Chief Fugaku, is this how you greet people? It's better to talk somewhere else. Conversations in this illusionary world won't be overheard." Fugaku Uchiha was taken aback, then greatly alarmed. How can you still be conscious? He originally intended to bring Obito here for interrogation. Everyone who fell under his illusion would become confused and easily reveal the information he wanted to know, but Obito Uchiha seemed completely unaffected. Could it be? Fugaku Uchiha considered a possibility. His expression changed completely, becoming more serious than ever before. In his pupils, the three tomo were spinning continuously, gradually showing signs of evolving into a new shape. Seeing this, Obito Uchiha also became more serious and hurriedly said, "Stop. Clan Chief Fugaku, if you really activate your Mangekyou Sharingan, I will have no choice but to resist, and this genjutsu world will not be able to maintain itself. Can we chat for a bit first, and then consider whether or not to take action?" Fugaku Uchiha then slowly emerged from his previous state, his eyes returning to their three-tomo state, but at the same time, a storm was brewing in his heart. You really also possess those eyes? When Obito shouted the words, Mangekyou, he was already 70 to 80% certain. Although this is a bit too incredible, it's the most reasonable explanation. The Mangekyou Sharingan is a game-changer for ordinary Sharingan. Although he was using a genjutsu in his three-tomo state, there is no doubt that he was using the power of the Mangekyou Sharingan, which even ordinary three-tomo Sharingan could not withstand. Only the Mangekyou Sharingan can counter the Mangekyou Sharingan. Therefore, the reason why Obito Uchiha was able to remain conscious is that he also possessed abilities at the same level. Seeing this, Obito knew he couldn't hide it any longer and could only sigh. As expected, hiding all this from the Uchiha clan isn't easy, clan head Fugaku. Since you've already realized this, I won't hide it from you either. Indeed, I've also awakened the Mangekyou Sharingan. After a pause, Obito continued. So, Chief Fugaku, now that you know my trump card and the basis for my negotiations, can we have a proper talk? Fugaku Uchiha was momentarily stunned, still reeling from the shock, so much so that he almost lost control of the genjutsu space. He couldn't help but imagine whether, if he hadn't activated his kaleidoscope, he would have been so startled that he would have developed a pair of kaleidoscopes himself. He asked hesitantly, Obito, if I may ask, how old are you this year? Episode 24. How strong are the peak 3rd generation masters? Seeing Fugaku's astonished expression, Obito shrugged. Chief Fugaku, since you've taken the time to see me today, I presume you've thoroughly investigated all my records from childhood to adulthood? Don't you know how old I am? Fugaku Uchiha still couldn't accept it, muttering to himself, but, awakening the Mangekyou Sharingan at 9 years old, how is that possible? The next moment, as if he had thought of something, he immediately said nervously, Obito, how many times have you used these eyes? Has your vision deteriorated? Listen to me, although they are powerful, never use them unless absolutely necessary. Obito Uchiha wanted to laugh, but he held it back. Don't worry, I only used it a few times when I awakened my Sharingan. The impact on my eyesight was negligible. I won't use it unless it's absolutely necessary. Fugaku Uchiha immediately breathed a sigh of relief, then said with a serious expression, Obito, now that you've awakened these eyes, from this moment on, you are one of the high-ranking members of our Uchiha clan. To be honest, I didn't pay much attention to what you said before. In fact, because your thoughts were so dangerous, I even considered keeping you here. But now, everything is completely different. With these eyes, you have endless possibilities. Besides, you're still young, and your future will be far more brilliant than mine. Therefore, I am willing to listen carefully to your thoughts. Obito nodded. Indeed, no matter where you go, you have to demonstrate the corresponding power to have the right to have an equal dialogue. Now that the secret of the Mangekyou Sharingan has been exposed, we must try our best to make this secret have corresponding value. Obito couldn't resist switching into his deceptive mode once again. Clan Chief Fugaku, before we get down to business, I'd like to ask a small question. What is your assessment of the overall strength of the Uchiha clan? Fugaku Uchiha was taken aback. He hadn't expected Obito to ask that. After a moment's thought, he answered confidently. Our Uchiha clan is incredibly strong. We have over 20 members who have awakened the 3-Tomo Sharingan. They would be top tier even among Jonin. I can assure you, at this stage, after the Senju clan has integrated into the civilian population, no other clan in Konoha can compare to our strength. Besides, now that we have 2 pairs of Mangekyou Sharingan, the gap between us and the entire Hokage lineage isn't that big anymore. Obito smiled. So, Clan Chief Fugaku believes that we still have a gap to close with the Hokage's lineage? Fugaku nodded. I've dealt with Orochimaru before, and his strength makes me very wary. If every one of the legendary Sannin of Konoha possessed that kind of power, then each of them would require the Mangekyou Sharingan to defeat. Furthermore, veteran powerhouses like Shimura Danzo and Mitokado Homura also possess power that surpasses the 3-Tomo level, as well as Fugaku Uchiha's eyes revealed deep apprehension. The 3rd Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, his title of the strongest Hokage is slightly exaggerated. Perhaps he's still not as good as our ancestor Madara or the 1st Hokage, Hashirama Senju, but not by much. I'm far from being his match. Obito thought to himself, I knew it. The 3rd Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, did have an effect with his boasting. He even almost convinced Fugaku Uchiha of it. No wonder that later, Shisui and Itachi both awakened the Mangekyou Sharingan, but they were still as docile as cats in front of the 3rd Hokage. Facts have long proven that only might makes right. Although Itachi and Shisui both yearned for peace, which member of the clan who awakened the Mangekyou Sharingan wasn't proud and arrogant? If the 3rd Hokage didn't have the strength, would they have submitted to him? Obito pondered for a moment and said, Clan head Fugaku, perhaps the 3rd Hokage isn't as strong as you imagine. But before he could finish speaking, Fugaku interrupted him. Obito, you're still young. I know you awakened the Mangekyou Sharingan at such a young age, and it's understandable that you're arrogant, but I've witnessed the 3rd Hokage's strength firsthand. I've mastered the nature transformations of 5 chakra natures. I'm proficient in thousands of ninjutsu, and I don't even know how many forbidden techniques I possess. Hanzo the Salamander, known as a demigod, is strong enough, but I have accurate information about him. I can assure you, he is absolutely no match for the 3rd Hokage. Obito was taken aback. Was the 3rd Hokage really that strong? He had witnessed the 3rd Hokage's power in his Edo Tensai state. He could hold his own against the 10 Tails using the 5 elements ninjutsu, which was indeed impressive. However, against him in his 6 paths form, he was instantly killed in one move. Okay, he was too strong back then. However, the third Hokage could never reach Hashirama Senju's level, even if he was truly strong and healthy in his youth and could unleash several more rounds of ninjutsu capable of fighting the Ten Tails. He would at most be comparable to Nagato. Wait a minute, if the third Hokage had Nagato's power at his peak, while it certainly wouldn't be as unique as the Rinnegan's abilities and he probably wouldn't have been able to surpass the Kage level, he would have been quite close. For ninjas who had never seen Hashirama Senju or Madara, the level of Kage was already beyond that of ordinary people. For example, Nagato thought he was invincible and considered himself a god every day. Thinking about it this way, everything seems to make sense. If a peak third Hokage had strength approaching that of a Kage, he certainly wouldn't be someone an ordinary Mangekyou Sharingan user could handle. The third Hokage isn't as old as he will be in the future, so at this point, he's at least a powerful Kage, right? Having grasped this point, Obito said clearly, "Clan head Fugaku, I roughly understand the current strength of the Uchiha clan. If we were to openly compete with the Hokage's faction, we are indeed considerably weaker." Fugaku said, "Good that you understand. So give up the idea of attacking the Hokage's lineage as soon as possible. If you really intend to fight head-on, your clan needs at least 6 pairs of Mangekyou Sharingan. Moreover, the Mangekyou Sharingan has significant side effects. It can cause blindness. We are not qualified to fight head-on." Obito was speechless. He was worried about Obito's youthful arrogance. He explained, "Actually, we don't need to fight head-on. Clan Chief Fugaku, you've misunderstood something. The Hokage lineage doesn't have the same cohesion as the Uchiha clan. They aren't part of the Senju clan, they represent their respective families. Therefore, in your mind, and even in the mind of the entire Uchiha clan, the strength of the Hokage lineage has been overestimated. They are not difficult to deal with." Obito understood this very well. Often, it's difficult to see the situation clearly without stepping outside one's established circle. The Uchiha clan members in Konoha didn't have the same magnanimity as Obito, who had been outside Konoha for many years. So what if he's the Kage of a village? We've seen it all before. He dares to declare war on all the Kage at the same time. But would the Uchiha clan of Konoha dare? Fugaku frowned and asked, "So, taking action against Danzo is truly your idea, and you haven't given up on it yet? But do you know the difficulty, and what the consequences would be if you were discovered?" Obito slowly said, "Clan Chief Fugaku, don't be hasty. I'll just ask you one question. Hasn't the Uchiha clan suffered under Danzo for too long? If there were an opportunity, without any risk, to eliminate Danzo, would you be willing?" Fugaku rolled his Sharingan eyes. "Nonsense, I dream of killing Danzo. That old man has harmed so many Uchiha." Obito nodded and said, "I have a plan to eliminate Danzo, guaranteed to be done without anyone knowing, and without any connection to the Uchiha clan." Episode 25. Danzo could do diplomacy, so why couldn't the Uchiha? Fugaku asked doubtfully, "Is there really such a plan?" Danzo is extremely cautious and wouldn't easily leave his root organization. Even if he did leave, he would always be surrounded by a large number of guards, under layers of protection. Furthermore, he is a master of wind release, and I even believe his skill in wind release is no less than that of the Kage. Unless I personally lead a large force of 3 Tomo clan members in a full-scale attack, there is no chance of success. But this would create a huge commotion, and it wouldn't be just an assassination anymore. A large number of Konoha ninja would arrive as reinforcements, and the Uchiha attacking the Hokage's assistant would be tantamount to treason. Obito smiled. "Clan Chief Fugaku, who said killing Danzo requires action within the village? Who said we Uchiha need to do it ourselves? We can just wait until he leaves the village and then use outside help, won't we?" Fugaku shook his head. "Obito, you're being too simplistic. Danzo doesn't leave the village easily. Even if he does, his movements are strictly confidential. It's very difficult for us to know immediately when he left and where he went. How could we possibly find an opportunity? Furthermore, to assassinate Danzo, using outsiders as intermediaries, how many outsiders have that kind of capability? Besides the other 4 major villages, I can't think of anyone else. If I were to collude with the 4 great villages to assassinate the Hokage, although I have utter contempt for Danzo, my moral compass wouldn't allow me to do such a thing." Obito glanced at Fugaku, surprised to find that Fugaku was even more upright than he had imagined. "You try to reason with Danzo about morality, but Danzo won't listen. He's done plenty of things by colluding with outsiders. But, who said killing Danzo required colluding with the 4 great ninja villages?" Obito instigated. "Clan head, I have a way to get Danzo out of the village and to where I want him to go at some point in the future. This will be Danzo's own decision, and it has nothing to do with the Uchiha clan. Furthermore, I also have a way to get the force capable of killing Danzo to appear there as well. After that, there will be a lot of room for maneuver. Moreover, I can even guarantee that the force that appears there won't belong to any of the 5 great villages. Is this possible? Fugaku was somewhat tempted, but more than that, he was skeptical. Obito confidently replied, I'll explain step by step. First, how to get Danzo out of the village. That's actually not difficult. The Third Shinobi World War is about to break out. Surely Chief Fugaku wouldn't be unaware of this. Fugaku Uchiha nodded. The Uchiha clan had its own intelligence network, so he was naturally aware of the recent anomalies in the ninja world. He immediately understood Obito's plan to take action when Danzo couldn't resist leaving the village to cause trouble during the war. Thinking about it that way, it does seem somewhat possible. Go on. Obito continued. Recently, an organization called Akatsuki was established in a megacure. Their philosophy is to avoid war and achieve peace through negotiation. They often join the weaker side in a conflict to balance the power. Although this organization is relatively new, it has great potential and is constantly growing stronger. Its leader is a disciple of Jiraiya, one of the legendary Sannin of Konoha. Clan Chief Fugaku, you can send someone to verify this. Jiraiya's apprentice? The peace organization? This is very valuable information. Fugaku nodded and said, I'll investigate. But what's the connection between this Akatsuki organization and the assassination attempt on Danzo? Obito continued. The fact that Hanzo of the Salamander allowed them to develop within his territory already speaks volumes. Obito held up one finger. Firstly, it represents part of Hanzo's attitude. Hanzo actually endorses this peace ideal, and perhaps he also wants to send a signal to quell the war in a megacure. Obito held up a second finger. Secondly, Akatsuki's strength, even if not overwhelming, is at least considerable, enough to make Hanzo wary. Otherwise, in the Land of Fire, would Konoha have stood idly by while an organization, even one that promotes peace, developed right under their noses? Fugaku grew increasingly confused. What does this prove? Obito said, it's simple. A united, war-free megacure, hidden rain village, is not in Konoha's interest, especially Danzo's. Imagine if a megacure were still as powerful as it was before World War II. Would the Konoha leadership be sleeping soundly? Furthermore, Danzo needs the support of many people to become Hokage, but he has no reputation in Konoha and can only resort to underhanded tactics, such as gaining the support of a demigod. But what makes Hanzo think he can support Danzo? Unless a megacure is constantly embroiled in war and lacks money and food, leaving it no choice but to ask Konoha for help, Danzo can only achieve cooperation on this basis. Therefore, the Akatsuki's peaceful ideology is extremely dangerous in Danzo's eyes. However, the Akatsuki also possesses considerable strength, and if a conflict were to break out between them and Hanzo, a megacure would be plunged into even greater internal strife. Chief Fugaku, tell me, is this matter worth Danzo's trip? Fugaku Uchiha's eyes lit up. If the Akatsuki organization you're talking about really has that much potential, Danzo might actually make a trip to the Land of Rain. So, this is your plan? Fugaku Uchiha found the idea increasingly brilliant. The Land of Rain might actually be able to kill Danzo, if only Hanzo of the Salamander were willing to intervene. And why can't we also contact Hanzo? The money and food Danzo can provide, we Uchiha can provide too. Hanzo can support Danzo, so why can't he support us Uchiha? A hint of excitement appeared on Fugaku Uchiha's face. From this plan, he not only saw the possibility of killing Danzo, but also something even more important, the possibility of the Uchiha gaining more influence in Konoha. Obito was taken aback. Was Fugaku Uchiha overthinking things? His original idea was that the Akatsuki organization needed to grow stronger but lacked financial resources. He could use this as an excuse to ask Fugaku for money from the Uchiha clan, use the Uchiha's money to support the organization, and eliminate Danzo at the same time, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. But after hearing Fugaku's words, he also thought it made sense. The Uchiha had both manpower and money, so why was only Danzo able to do diplomacy, while the Uchiha couldn't? As the founding clan of Konoha, the Uchiha clan's stance will not be questioned unless they make a fundamental mistake. Even if the Hokage lineage objects, we Uchiha clan have something to say too. Everything we've done is for Konoha, isn't it? Konoha belongs to everyone, not just Sarutobi or Shimura, so. Obito's eyes lit up. Engaging in more diplomacy really was a way to revitalize the Uchiha clan. So he nodded. Ah, yes, that's exactly what I'm thinking. The Uchiha need political power, but this political power can come not only from within Konoha, but also from elsewhere, like a demigod. We can broaden our horizons, we don't have to limit ourselves to just one village. Fugaku Uchiha was now truly impressed with Obito and couldn't help but praise him. Obito, I must say, you're a genius. Not only did you awaken the Mangekyou Sharingan, but more remarkably, at only 9 years old, you possess the mindset of a Hokage. No, even describing it as the mindset of a Hokage is too narrow. In short, because of your ideas, killing Danzo is no longer important. What's important is that I suddenly understand how the Uchiha clan establishes itself in the village and even the entire ninja world. So, I'll send someone to contact Hanzo right away? Episode 26 Befriending the Akatsuki Organization. Contacting Hanzo seems like a good thing for the Uchiha clan, but what about the Akatsuki? Obito coughed sharply. Clan Chief Fugaku, I think we should contact the Akatsuki first, rather than Hanzo. Fugaku was taken aback. While the Akatsuki may possess considerable strength, they are by no means as important as Hanzo, are they? Obito thought to himself, that's because you don't know that Nagato possessed Madara's Rinnegan, but outwardly, he certainly couldn't say that. Clan head Fugaku, as the de facto ruler of a megacure, no matter how many benefits you offer, he'll find it difficult to consider the Uchiha clan as one of his own. The Akatsuki is different. They're currently penniless, and their leadership is made up of energetic young people. If we can lend a helping hand now, we can gain a lot of friendship. Fugaku Uchiha frowned. But, even with all the friendship, a small power in a small country is of no importance to us Uchiha, is it? Obito smiled. Clan Chief Fugaku, have you forgotten that I once said the Akatsuki's leadership was Jiraiya's student? Fugaku was taken aback, then belatedly realized that befriending the Akatsuki could also connect him to Jiraiya, then it means something completely different to him. Even though Hanzo was strong, he was still from another village and his support for the Uchiha clan was limited. Jiraiya, on the other hand, was a true Konoha native and a staunch member of the Hokage lineage. He could even directly influence the thoughts of the third Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi. If we can befriend Jiraiya, paying some price would be worthwhile. Not to mention, could Jiraiya's disciple be an ordinary person? He was very optimistic about Minato Namikaze's future. If the Akatsuki's leadership had half of Minato's talent, then this investment would be extremely profitable. Fugaku immediately laughed. Obito, you've thought things through perfectly. I'll send someone to investigate right away. If the Akatsuki's leadership is indeed Jiraiya's student, I'll contact them. We Uchiha aren't short of money. Obito nodded. The Uchiha clan has accumulated a vast amount of resources since the Warring States period, making them the wealthiest clan in the entire ninja world. A little of that would be enough for Yahiko, Nagato, and Conan to get through the most difficult early stages and develop their power. This would also make it easier for him to make contact with the Akatsuki organization later. However, what consequences will the growth and expansion of the Akatsuki organization lead to? Hanzo's attitude also needs to be taken into account. Clan Chief Fugaku, Hanzo isn't unimportant either. So, after befriending the Akatsuki, you can further engage with Hanzo. Ideally, you could facilitate an alliance between the Akatsuki and Hanzo. This way, the Uchiha clan will have a certain degree of influence within the Land of Rain. Fugaku paused, then pondered. However, this approach inevitably risks interfering in other countries' internal affairs. I fear Hanzo might become wary and unwilling to engage with us. Obito Uchiha thought about it. It was indeed a problem, but he wasn't worried. So why not wait a few years until the war fully breaks out, or even reaches the Land of Rain's territory? At that time, if we simply show up in the Land of Rain and extend a bit of goodwill, perhaps it won't be us seeking them out, but rather them coming to us. Fugaku Uchiha couldn't help but shake his head, suddenly realizing that compared to Obito, who was adept at manipulating people's hearts, he was nothing but a greenhorn. Why would a 9-year-old child have such a way of thinking? He couldn't understand it at all. Fortunately, there are many oddballs in the ninja world, and perhaps Obito was one of those oddballs. You've anticipated everything, Obito. I'm leaving this matter to you. Let me know when to begin, and I'll cooperate unconditionally. Obito nodded and smiled. That concludes our conversation for today. Let's go. Fugaku Uchiha nodded, his 3-tomo eyes spinning as he dispelled the genjutsu. Suddenly, the two figures returned to reality. Although a long time had passed in the illusionary world, only a mere 5 seconds had passed in the real world. Makoto Uchiha, her face grave, stood up while holding Itachi. Seeing the two of them frozen in place, she knew that Obito had fallen under her husband's genjutsu and was probably being questioned in the genjutsu space. Once the two regained their senses, she immediately went to Fugaku and said, "Fugaku, Obito is just a child. A little discipline is enough, there's no need to be so serious." Fugaku Uchiha chuckled and shook his head. "I don't dare treat him like a child right now. We just had a conversation in the genjutsu world. Let's talk about it in the private room." This time, it was Makoto's turn to be surprised. She glanced at Obito, whose expression remained perfectly calm, and asked incredulously, "Obito, you were still able to stay conscious while under your genjutsu?" She was well aware of Fugaku's level of illusion magic. Even a normal 3-tomo spell couldn't break free from it. Fugaku nodded and said, "Anyway, don't worry, my minor conflict with Obito has been resolved. Obito is now one of us, and he's trustworthy." Makoto breathed a sigh of relief. She didn't want a simple conversation to end badly. Seeing that he had basically achieved his goal, Obito said, "Madam, you can ask Clan Chief Fugaku for details later. I have absolutely no ill intentions. I have a graduation dinner to attend later, so I won't stay any longer. Farewell." After saying that, Obito turned to leave. At this moment, Fugaku spoke up. "Wait, take these before you go." Suddenly, Fugaku pulled a sealed scroll from his sleeve and unsealed it. It contained a considerable amount of money and some ninjutsu scrolls from the Uchiha clan. Fugaku said, "These were originally intended for you today. Although it's not much, it's a token of my appreciation." Obito glanced at it and noticed it was much more generous than what he had received in his previous life. He smiled and said, "Since it was originally intended for me by Clan Chief Fugaku, then I shall accept it." After saying that, he stepped forward, took the sealing scroll from Fugaku's hand, made a hand seal, and put the items back exactly as they were. Afterwards, he took the sealing scroll, nodded slightly to the two of them, and left the clan chief's mansion. A hint of surprise flashed in Makoto Uchiha's beautiful eyes. He knows sealing techniques? And he uses them very skillfully. "I thought he was going to take these things away?" Fugaku smiled. "He knows a lot. I was surprised at first, but now I'm almost numb to it." On the other hand, after bidding farewell to Fugaku Uchiha, Obito went home and found a place to store all the ninjutsu scrolls from the sealing scroll. He actually knew all the advanced ninjutsu on these scrolls, including Uchiha clan fire release techniques of rank B or higher and various shuriken throwing techniques. Therefore, they were of little value and could only be collected. Money is always a good thing, and Obito nodded in satisfaction as he looked at the extra 500,000 taels in his hand. Because he rarely had any money, Obito lived a very frugal life and couldn't even afford to treat Rin to a few good meals. Now, things can finally improve a little. With that thought in mind, Obito left and returned to the Ninja Academy. Episode 27 Red Bean. Unless the three Sannin accept me as their disciple, I can eat as much as I want and never gain weight. At the entrance of the Konoha Ninja Academy's teaching building, the elite students who had already taken the exam put on their ninja headbands and gathered at the entrance, their faces beaming with excitement as they looked forward to their upcoming ninja careers. Lin, who was also wearing a ninja headband, saw this scene, shook her head slightly, and sighed. Because Obito had told her a lot about the future, she knew that the Third Shinobi World War was about to begin, and these Ninja Academy students would one day go to the battlefield. She wondered how many of them would survive. "Rin, what are you sighing about here? Is it because you didn't see Obito?" At that moment, Kurenai appeared beside her and patted her on the shoulder. A blush crept across Lin's face, and she couldn't help but retort, No. Obito said he went back to the Uchiha clan to handle some matters, but he'll be back on time for the gathering." Hong laughed and teased, Yes, everyone knows Obito is completely obedient to my Rin. If you tell him to go east, he absolutely wouldn't dare go west. Ah, I wish I had such a strong, handsome, and obedient boyfriend. Lin's face flushed even more. Red, you've misunderstood. Obito and I aren't in that kind of relationship. But Asuma has been pursuing you all along, hasn't he? He's a really nice guy, and he's the third Hokage's child. A hint of disdain appeared on Hong's face. Asuma, he's just a rebellious brat who never grows up. He keeps saying the third Hokage's position was bought with money, even though the third Hokage did so much for Konoha. Sigh, he's been pretty good to me, but anyway, he's nowhere near as good as your Obito. Lin gave her a motherly smile. Really, Hong? But I don't think you dislike this feeling at all, even though you're just saying one thing and meaning another. Hong's face flushed instantly. Nonsense, I didn't. But you, Rin, the whole class can tell your relationship with Obito is unusual. What, you still haven't officially confirmed it? Rin's eyes suddenly deepened. How should I put it? My situation with Obito is a bit special. In short, it's different from what you imagine, but it's also closer than you think. Perhaps in this lifetime, I can't live without him, and he can't live without me. Hong scratched her head immediately. Oh dear, I don't understand these complicated relationships either. Let's not think about it anymore. I've made plans to meet Hongdu tonight. We're going to eat meatballs together. Red Bean? Isn't she in class today? And, does the barbecue restaurant have meatballs too? Lin asked curiously. Most of the teachers are here today to oversee the assessment. The lower grades will be on holiday after their morning classes. As for meatballs, the barbecue restaurant obviously doesn't have them, but we can buy some to eat. Anyway, I've already asked Asuma to buy some, Red said slyly. Lin suddenly became worried. Bringing extra food to the Akamichi family's house for dinner, would they be kicked out? At this point, other students came out one after another, and each student passed the test very smoothly. Not only that, outside the ninja school, a white-haired man wearing a mask also strolled over slowly. The appearance of the white-haired boy instantly attracted the attention of many students. Look, that's Kakashi. Wow, it's Kakashi. He really came? Yeah, I heard he became a Chunin not long after graduating from the Ninja Academy. That's amazing. Compared to most of his classmates who had just become genin, Kakashi's status as a Chunin made him stand out from the crowd. Kakashi remained nonchalant, greeting the other classmates one by one before walking over to Rin. Yo, long time no see. Where's Obito? Why didn't he come? Rin smiled. Obito said he had some things to take care of and will be back soon. Kakashi couldn't help but sarcastically remark, he really is a busy man. By the way, Rin, did you get the class assignment information? Lin glanced around. Since she was surrounded by classmates, she couldn't be too direct. She simply said, we got it. We've been assigned to the same class, and our Jonin instructor is Minato Namikaze. Kakashi nodded. He had just received the news too. Just as Obito had said, their teacher was Minato-sensei. So, would Minato-sensei really become the fourth Hokage? Kurenai, standing nearby, was somewhat surprised. Kakashi, didn't you graduate a long time ago? I heard you've even become a Chunin now. You should have teammates, right? Do you still need to be assigned to a team like us? Kakashi explained, after becoming a Chunin, I applied to become an independent ninja. I usually go to the mission hall to take on missions, and I spend the rest of my time training, so I haven't been assigned to a team yet. Red Dot nodded. I never thought it could be like this. I'm so envious of you, Rin. Your teammates are Kakashi and Obito. They're incredibly reliable. Lin smiled. She couldn't very well tell Hong that she had known her future class assignments 4 years ago. At this moment, not only Lin's group, but many classmates were discussing their class assignments. Some were happy, some were sad. Such is the way of life. Then someone said, have you heard? The legendary Sannin of Konoha are also planning to take on disciples. Lady Tsunade has returned to the village and said she will choose a disciple from among the graduates. Lord Orochimaru is also interested in this. This news caused an uproar among many Ninja Academy students. Really? Quote, of course it's true, but we already have mentors, will they still choose us? Even with instructors, the selection of Konoha's 3 legendary Sannin for disciples will definitely be rearranged. I wonder who will be lucky enough to be chosen. Damn it, I want to be one of their students too. Compared to the Jonin instructors from their own village whom these classmates didn't even know about, the legendary Sannin of Konoha were clearly of much higher caliber. This is the most famous and powerful ninja in all of Konoha besides the 3rd Hokage. Who wouldn't want a mentor of the Sannin caliber right after graduation? Even Rin couldn't help but feel a little hopeful. She had admired Tsunade since she was a child, and if Tsunade chose to take her as her disciple, she really didn't know how to refuse. Just then, Hongdu skipped over, her face full of curiosity. Lin Senpai, Hong Senpai, good afternoon. What are you discussing? Kurenai smiled and said, I heard that the legendary Sannin of Konoha are going to take on students from among the graduates of the Ninja Academy. Even Rin couldn't help but want to abandon Obito and Kakashi after hearing that. Enko, wouldn't you like to have one of the legendary Sannin as your teacher? Red Bean couldn't help but roll her eyes. I'd like to, but I'm not a graduate. Besides, why would powerful ninjas like the legendary Sannin even look at me? Compared to the 3 ninja taking on disciples, I'm more concerned about what to eat for dinner. I heard there are some delicious dumplings? Hong couldn't help but tease, all you do all day is eat meatballs. Aren't you afraid of growing up to be a big fatso? Red Bean looked at her skinny, bean-like figure and complained. The idea that I'll grow up to be a fatso is as unreliable as the Sannin taking me as their disciple. Don't worry, unless the Sannin actually do take me as their disciple, I won't gain weight no matter how much I eat. Episode 28 Hidan, where are you? I need you so much. Hong couldn't help but smile, shook her head, and looked at Hongdu with a helpless expression. Rin, on the other hand, was a little embarrassed. Who said I would abandon Kakashi and Obito? Hong smiled and said, but Rin, if Lady Tsunade were willing to take you as her disciple, wouldn't you hesitate? Lin thought for a moment, then confessed, I do hesitate, but... Rin's expression hardened. If the price is abandoning Obito, I still can't accept it. Besides, Rin revealed a confident expression. Even without Lady Tsunade, I will definitely become an excellent medical ninja in the future. Kakashi, standing to the side, couldn't help but narrow his eyes, thinking to himself, in the future, Rin and Obito would be pretty good teammates. At that moment, a voice rang out. Alright, stop thinking about it so much. It's true that Lady Tsunade is taking on a disciple this time, but the choice has already been made, and it's impossible for anyone else to be chosen. Obito slowly walked over. Kurenai was taken aback. Obito, why are you acting like a ghost? When did you get here? I didn't notice at all. Not only was Hong surprised, but Kakashi was also taken aback. Just now, he also didn't notice anyone approaching, which would have been extremely dangerous during a battle. With his strength increasing over the past few years, it was thought that the gap between him and Obito had narrowed, but unexpectedly, it was still so large. Obito shrugged and said timidly, just now, when Rin said she couldn't abandon me. Lin blushed deeply and couldn't help but huff, Obito, why are you getting more and more indecent? However, she immediately became curious. You just said that the candidate has been decided. What do you mean? Obito explained. Lady Tsunade had a lover who died on the battlefield. Rin, you know that, right? Rin nodded. Yes, I've heard. That incident was a huge blow to Lady Tsunade. Obito continued. Lady Tsunade's lover is named Dan Kato. You can find out who among the Ninja Academy graduates hasn't been assigned to a class yet, and what her name is. That will explain why Lady Tsunade took on a student. Oh, is that so? Hong looked surprised, then thought for a moment. In our year, there were indeed some people who weren't assigned to classes. It was Jingyan. Hong couldn't help but look towards a lonely figure not far away. Since Jingyan hadn't received her class assignment information after the graduation exams, she thought she had been abandoned. At this moment, she was standing alone in the wind, feeling bewildered, unaware that someone was looking at her. Is it Shizune? Kato Shizune, she shares the same surname as Kato Dan. I understand now, did Lady Tsunade take her on as a disciple because of her lover? Rin looked on with a sudden realization, then glanced at Obito with a hint of reproach. She had just gone over to comfort Jingyan after she noticed she hadn't been assigned to a class, and now she realized the clown was actually herself? It's all Obito's fault for not telling her such important news. Obito couldn't help but say awkwardly, they were all small things. I completely forgot about them. Then, Obito said seriously, in short, the class assignments are actually decided in advance, generally based on each student's strengths and bonds. For example, the famous Ino Shika Cho trio from Konoha will definitely be in the same class after graduation. And like us, since we've played together since childhood, there's a high chance we'll be in the same class too. Once the class assignments are finalized, they generally won't be changed. So even if the Sannin are taking on disciples, they've definitely given prior notice, listing the disciples they want to take on separately. Those of us who have already been assigned to train Jonin can forget about it. Red Dot nodded. No wonder I ended up paired with Asuma. Then, she looked at Shizune beside her and said, sigh, Shizune is so lucky. Rin breathed a sigh of relief. Now she no longer had to agonize over choosing between Tsunade and Obito. However, she was still a little disappointed that she hadn't been accepted as a disciple by Lady Tsunade. Seeing this, Obito quickly comforted her. It's alright, Rin. Just because you don't have a chance now doesn't mean you won't have one later. Besides, our Jonin instructor is also very strong. Hearing this, Kurenai couldn't help but ask curiously, Obito, are your Jonin instructors also very strong? But I've never even heard of Minato Namikaze. Obito chuckled. Minato-sensei is still very young, only 19 years old. He's a genius like Kakashi, even. Obito glanced at Kakashi deliberately. He's an even more talented genius than Kakashi, which is why the third Hokage had Minato-sensei mentor Kakashi. Kakashi snorted. Obito was mocking him again, as usual. However, when he thought about how his teacher would become the fourth Hokage in the future, and would only be in his 20s at that time, he realized that Obito was right. Nevertheless, Kakashi chose to retaliate. Minato-sensei is indeed excellent, unlike some people. If I hadn't graduated from the Ninja Academy early, I'd still be at the bottom of my class. It seems that some people were just there as an afterthought in this class assignment. Obito was furious. Kakashi was absolutely right. In his previous life, the reason he was able to join Minato's team, aside from the third Hokage's act of kindness towards the Uchiha clan, was simply because of his bond with Kakashi. Choosing him was better than choosing anyone else. What do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean? Am I not telling the truth? You idiot, Kakashi said. Rin watched Obito and Kakashi bickering with a smile, then glanced at the last elite class student walking out of the ninja academy, and quickly said, "Alright, stop arguing, everyone passed the test." Then, she raised her voice and said to the students present, "Let's gather together and go eat barbecue." Some students, who had been eagerly anticipating the moment, excitedly shouted, "Yay, let's go." At that moment, Sarutobi Asuma also rushed in, carrying a bag full of 3 colored dumplings. He stood foolishly next to Kurenai and gave her a fawning smile. "Hong, I've bought all the 3 colored dumplings you wanted." Hong happily took the meatballs and naturally shared them with Hongdu and Lin, then ate them with a satisfied expression. "Asuma, you're not completely useless after all. The dumplings were delicious, thanks." Sarutobi Asuma was thrilled to hear Kurenai's praise, feeling that everything he had done was worthwhile. Obito witnessed this scene and couldn't help but think that Asuma was being far too pathetic. Was it really worth it to pursue a girl? But immediately, Lin, who was standing to the side, clasped her hands together and said gratefully to Asuma, "Asuma, thank you so much for treating us to dumplings. I'll invite Hong next time and treat you to delicious food." Asuma's eyes lit up. "Really?" Lin hummed in agreement and smiled, "Really?" Obito suddenly realized, why wasn't it me who bought the dumplings? I just got a lot of money from Fugaku. I'm not short of money. How infuriating. Seeing this, Asuma patted Obito on the shoulder and said earnestly, "Brother, you're still young in this area. Watch carefully, learn well. I'll only teach you once." Obito roared inwardly, "Hidan, where are you? Quick, I need you right now." Episode 29. Meeting Minato. Finally, Obito's guilt. As the sun set and evening fell, a group of Ninja Academy students gathered together and enjoyed a delicious meal. Due to the 3 prohibitions of ninjas, minors cannot drink alcohol, so everyone ordered juice instead. Cheers. Quote, the group clinked their glasses and drank the juice in one gulp. The scene before them was so beautiful. Everyone's face was filled with a pure, innocent naivete. Even Obito, immersed in this atmosphere, couldn't help but be infected by it. But it's uncertain how long this beauty can last. War brings pain, but it can also make people grow. Well, let's enjoy this moment while we can, Obito thought to himself, and joined the army of people who were obsessed with barbecue. The meal went well, with everyone enjoying themselves. Even the staff at the Akamichi Yakiniku restaurant tolerated the Ninja Academy students, bringing in dumplings to eat, such an outrageous thing. The next day, Obito got up early, did some training, and then headed to the Ninja Academy to attend its graduation ceremony. On the road, an elderly woman was carrying large and small bags, struggling to move forward. "Seriously? I already came a little earlier this time, and you're still coming?" Even Obito couldn't help but wonder if these old men and women were actually white Zetsu in disguise, and were they there specifically to ambush him? He couldn't possibly stand idly by and do nothing about something like this. Thankfully, he's no longer the Obito he once was. Hands form a mudra, shadow clone technique. Suddenly, a clone that looked exactly like him appeared beside him. "I'm going to the graduation ceremony. You stay here and help the old lady," Obito said to his clone. The clone immediately patted its chest. "Don't worry, leave this to me." And so, Obito continued walking towards the Ninja Academy, and this time he wasn't late. After a relatively short graduation speech and a lecture on the will of fire by the third Hokage, Obito successfully received his graduation certificate. Afterwards, he and Rin went to the training ground to meet their instructor, a Jonin. When the two arrived, Minato Namikaze and Kakashi Hatake were already waiting. Obito spotted the blonde figure immediately. He hadn't changed at all since their reunion decades later during the Fourth Shinobi World War. He lowered his head with a hint of guilt. Since his rebirth, he has been intentionally or unintentionally avoiding Minato-sensei. But what's meant to happen will happen. Minato-sensei is actually a very punctual person. As far as I can remember, in the beginning, he was always the one who was late, and Minato-sensei was always waiting for him. When did all of this begin to change? It started with the war. From that time on, Minato-sensei became very busy, constantly traveling back and forth between the village and the battlefield, and always arriving late for the agreed meeting time. Perhaps it was precisely because Minato-sensei possessed the fastest speed in the ninja world that he shouldered such greater responsibilities, needed to provide support in various places without a moment's rest, and was always a step too slow at crucial moments. In his past life, for a long time, he blamed Minato for not arriving in time to save Rin. But now, thinking about it, that was just taking his anger out on her. How could Madara not have deliberately distracted Minato when carrying out the plan? He's Obito, he's practically inhuman. The more Obito thought about it, the lower his head went, and he even couldn't help but step back slightly, hiding his figure behind Rin. Minato Namikaze watched this scene from a short distance away, somewhat bewildered. He gave Kakashi an awkward smile. Kakashi, do I look particularly fierce? Did I scare Obito? Kakashi couldn't help but sigh inwardly. If the future Obito depicted is real, then he simply doesn't know how to face you, Minato-sensei. But outwardly, Kakashi couldn't say that. He said somewhat awkwardly, perhaps it's just that Obito feels guilty towards Minato-sensei. Minato asked suspiciously, is that so? But Obito hasn't done anything to wrong me, has he? Just as Minato hesitated about whether he should soften his attitude and take the initiative to greet him, Rin had already quietly squeezed Obito's hand. Obito, don't be afraid. I said I would face anything with you. After saying that, Rin pulled Obito forward, and before Obito could react, she had already bowed deeply to Minato Namikaze at an angle of more than 90 degrees. Minato Namikaze was startled. This went beyond a normal disciple's greeting. It was practically a solemn apology. He quickly said, you're not late. Kakashi and I arrived early because we didn't have anything to do this morning. You don't need to do this. Rin shook her head and said solemnly, no, Minato-sensei, Obito did do something very, very wrong to you. It was really outrageous, even I think it was extremely wrong. I'm just apologizing on his behalf and hope to receive your forgiveness. Minato Namikaze was taken aback. He couldn't help but wonder if some contact he had with Obito had left the child with a very serious psychological trauma. But after thinking for a long time, he couldn't find anything unusual, so he could only scratch his head. Maybe it was just something trivial, I've completely forgotten about it, ha ha ha. At this moment, Obito finally mustered his courage. He raised his head and slowly said, Minato-sensei, there are some things I can't tell you now, but I will tell you later. Lin is right, I did do something very wrong, and I don't even expect your forgiveness. After saying this, Obito knelt down and bowed deeply to Minato, but I will do my best to make amends. If one day, Minato-sensei learns the truth and tries to take my life, I will have no objections. Minato Namikaze became increasingly confused as he listened, but he quickly went to Obito, helped him up and smiled. Obito, although I don't know what happened, let's just assume something did happen. If you don't want to talk about it, I won't ask. But whatever happened, I forgive you. Now you've been assigned to class 7, which means you're my disciple. If you do anything wrong, it's my responsibility as your master. Obito couldn't hold back his tears. As always, Minato forgave him, but this only increased his guilt. He choked up as he said, Mr. Minato, you will always be my best teacher. Minato Namikaze gently patted Obito's head, then his gaze turned serious as he took out a pair of bells and pinned them behind his back. However, to become my disciple, you still need to pass the final test. Come and snatch it, snatch the bell from me. After a pause, Minato continued. Originally, I was going to say that there are only 2 bells, and the person who doesn't get one will be eliminated. But based on what just happened, I've judged that you all have a very deep bond, so I won't test whether you consider each other teammates. I'll only test your individual skills and teamwork. Minato's eyes sharpened. Come on, get serious. Treat this like you're going to kill me. Grab the bell, and everyone passes. Episode 30 Stealing the Bell. Seeing Minato assume a fighting stance, Obito regained his composure. He stood up and winked at Kakashi and Rin. The two instantly understood, quickly moving to his side and assuming a defensive stance. In this life, because Kakashi was able to recover earlier, he is not as cold and unapproachable as he was in his previous life. On the contrary, the three of them often contacted each other in private, trained and fought together, and their teamwork ability was much better than in their previous life. Seeing that the three had quickly set up a defensive formation, Minato couldn't help but show a hint of admiration in his eyes. Just as the information said, they worked together quite smoothly. Faced with a stronger Jonin, choosing to defend instead of attacking immediately was a wise choice. However, Minato chuckled, since you want me to attack first, I'll grant your wish. Against a ninja like me, simply standing still and defending isn't a good option. After saying that, Minato's figure vanished instantly, and in just a moment, he appeared in front of Kakashi. Wow, so fast. Kakashi looked horrified and instinctively dodged backward, but he still took the punch that came flying at him from Minato. Bang! Kakashi was sent flying, barely managing to regain his footing in midair before landing in a very awkward position. He broke out in a cold sweat. If Minato had thrown a kunai instead of a fist, he would have been seriously injured, if not killed. I thought that after several years of training, he should be close to being a Jonin, if not quite, but to my surprise, not only was he inferior to Obito, a reincarnated individual, but he was also far behind Minato-sensei. Just as Obito said, Minato-sensei is indeed the fastest ninja in the world. The yellow flash of Konoha? He truly lives up to his reputation. On the other side, after Kakashi was knocked away, Rin belatedly realized what was happening, reached into her ninja tool bag, pulled out a kunai and shot it at Minato, then quickly retreated. As a ninja with a medical focus, she kept Obito's words in mind. In battle, she should prioritize her own safety, and if she missed her first attack, she should flee far away. However, the scene she had imagined, where Minato-sensei had to slow down because of dealing with her kunai, was different from what she had envisioned. Minato Namikaze merely sidestepped, dodging the attack, and immediately adjusted his stance, continuing his trajectory almost unaffected. Rin was utterly shocked. Was this what Obito had described as Minato's incredible adaptability and lightning-fast reflexes? That's simply inhuman. In fact, at this very moment, Minato Namikaze was already quite satisfied with the members of Team 7 whom he was about to take over. From the start, the three-man defensive formation troubled him. It was difficult to break through using conventional methods, and he had to deal with it seriously. Given his fighting style, if he's serious, ending the fight in an instant is to be expected. However, Kakashi was the first to react. Although he still took a punch, he was not completely incapacitated. This level of skill is actually not much different from that of a typical Jonin. Lin was the same. As a support role in the team, she was not greedy or reckless, and did not leave him any openings at the first moment. He had to put in more effort to deal with Lin. Although it only added some trouble for him, it already had some effect when facing an opponent like him. However, that's all there is to it. As long as Rin loses her ability to fight, then Team 7, with Kakashi, the strongest member, temporarily unable to provide support, and Obito stuck in place, will no longer be able to fight together. Minato thought to himself, a triumphant smile spreading across his face. However, at this moment, Obito, who hadn't made any move at all, started to react. As he soared towards Rin from the air alongside Minato, he also moved, his speed increasing dramatically. He leapt up mid-air, his hands reaching for the bell at Minato's waist. Oh no, Obito's target is the bell. Minato immediately realized Obito's actions, but because Obito's timing was perfect, he was in an awkward situation. After a series of continuous maneuvers, including knocking Kakashi away, dodging kunai, and instantly adjusting his position to attack Rin, even with his excellent coordination, his techniques were starting to wear off, and he couldn't change direction immediately. Obito seized this fleeting opening and launched an attack, and the speed was extremely fast, so fast that he could see it clearly, but was powerless to stop it. No, we can't let Obito get the bell so easily. Is that the only way? Minato smiled wryly. He hadn't expected to be forced to use this move, which he hadn't originally planned to use in this assessment. At this moment, Obito's hand was about to touch the bell. He looked pleased and satisfied with the timing of his move. Minato-sensei, I finally beat you this time. Thinking this, Obito had already touched the bell, but just as he was about to grab it, Minato Namikaze's entire figure suddenly disappeared from the spot. The next moment, Minato appeared crouching down, holding a kunai not far away. Obito grabbed at empty air, then had a strong sense of déjà vu. He instinctively turned his head and, sure enough, saw Minato Namikaze's figure standing in front of a flying thunder god kunai not far away. Obito couldn't help but feel annoyed. Wasn't this just a normal test? Using the flying thunder god technique was going too far. Rin and Kakashi were also taken aback. Just now, they saw Obito about to succeed and thought the trial would end without any major incident. Unexpectedly, Minato-sensei's figure suddenly disappeared in mid-air and reappeared in another place. This is definitely not something the body flicker technique can do. So is it the flying thunder god technique that Obito mentioned? The ability to appear beside the enemy at any time, to attack at any time, and to retreat at any time even if unsuccessful. This ability is simply unbeatable. On the other side, Minato Namikaze slowly stood up, holding the flying thunder god kunai. He looked at Obito with a somewhat surprised expression. I must say, Obito, your strength has exceeded my expectations. You actually forced me to use the Flying Thunder God technique. Actually, everyone who could force me to use this technique would be considered qualified. After all, even a regular Jonin couldn't force me to use it. But now I'm more curious about you. You seem stronger than Kakashi, so show me all your real skills. After saying that, Minato Namikaze disappeared again, reappearing beside Obito. Obito smiled wryly. Without activating his Sharingan, even knowing Minato's fighting style, he still couldn't keep up. He could barely turn to the side and desperately dodge a punch, but that was his limit. The next punch was already upon him. Bang! Obito was hit squarely, but his body turned into a wooden stake, while his true form appeared in mid-air behind Minato Namikaze. Although he managed to use the substitution jutsu at the last moment, the situation was still far from optimistic. Because Minato-sensei had already reacted, he quickly turned his head and continued his attack on him. He was now in mid-air and couldn't change direction again. Obito quickly formed hand seals. Fire release, great fireball technique. Suddenly, a massive fireball erupted from his mouth, engulfed in scorching flames, heading towards the direction Minato Namikaze had traveled. Episode 31 qualified. A ninjutsu like the Great Fireball technique isn't actually a big threat to a ninja like Minato Namikaze. Obito's goal wasn't to hit the opponent, but to temporarily slow down his attack. As expected, a hint of surprise flashed in Minato Namikaze's eyes, and he had no choice but to twist his body to dodge the huge fireball. The fireball hurtled downwards, collided violently with the ground, and exploded, creating a plume of thick smoke. Obito also took this opportunity to land safely. However, merely escaping unscathed was not enough. Obito understood that allowing Minato to gain the upper hand was extremely dangerous. The Knight of the Nine Tails rampage involuntarily flashed through his mind, showing how Minato-sensei had repeatedly outmaneuvered him. With that in mind, he decided to strike first. He swiftly pulled a large shuriken from his ninja tool pouch and formed hand seals again. Fire release, Red Phoenix Claw. Instantly, a large number of flaming shuriken shot towards Minato Namikaze. This move isn't very effective against some tough ninjas, but it's perfect for fragile characters like Minato. After dodging the Great Fireball, he had to continue dodging this move, Phoenix Flower Claw Red. While dodging, Minato Namikaze couldn't help but marvel at how many fire release ninjutsu Obito knew, and how perfectly he timed and managed their power. These are things that weren't recorded in the Ninja Academy. It seems that Obito is even more outstanding than he imagined. Although he hasn't awakened the Sharingan, he's already beyond the level of a regular genin, or even a typical chunin. He's almost at the threshold of Jonin. After Obito stalled with 2 consecutive ninjutsu attacks, Kakashi readjusted. Facing a formidable opponent like Minato, he dared not hold back in the slightest. His body flashed with lightning as he unleashed the lightning blade, which he had already mastered to a great extent. Instantly, thunder roared, and Kakashi, empowered by his lightning release, surged forward, charging towards Minato. Rin, who had also retreated smoothly, freed up her hands to throw shuriken around Minato. This action was not intended to hit Minato, but only to block his escape space and create an opportunity for Kakashi to rush in. Seeing this, Obito also laughed. Having just unleashed 2 ninjutsu, even in his normal state without using the 3 Tomo technique, it was a considerable drain on him. But there's enough chakra left to unleash that technique. He didn't believe that Minato-sensei would stoop so low as to use the Flying Thunder God technique again, so this time, he prepared a big gift. The hands formed a mudra again. Fire release, Wild Wind Dance. Suddenly, Obito spat out a spinning, ever-growing fire dragon from his mouth, which headed towards Minato Namikaze. Although lacking the power and speed of Kamui, this technique is still Obito's most proficient and offensive ninjutsu. Even Minato Namikaze felt a strong threat from this move. Amidst Kakashi's charge, Rin's shuriken, and Obito's chaotic flurry of attacks, Minato made the optimal choice. He abruptly stopped and changed direction. His figure, which was originally heading to the left, suddenly stopped and turned to the right, narrowly escaping the swirling storm. At that moment, he inevitably ran into one of the shuriken Lin had shot at him. But he remained completely calm. He picked up the Flying Thunder God kunai he had just picked up and swung it forward. Ding! With a crisp sound, Rin's shuriken was sliced in 2. He then quickly turned his head to look at Kakashi, who had already charged close. Kakashi's goal was equally clear. He reached for the bell at Minato's waist. After a series of dodges, Minato found himself in a situation where his attack was running out of time and he couldn't change direction. The three of them coordinated very well, and their attacks were almost continuous, making it very difficult for him. He only had time to twist his waist at the last moment. Kakashi's hand barely grazed the bell at his waist before he uncontrollably lunged forward a short distance before stopping. Minato wiped the sweat from his brow, having already analyzed Kakashi's situation. Using lightning release for high-speed movement? Fortunately, this technique isn't fully developed yet, and coupled with a lack of sufficient dynamic vision, it's impossible to effectively observe the subtle movements of the enemy during an attack, leading to a deviation in the outcome. Even so, at this age, such lightning release ninjutsu is truly worthy of a genius. But in the end, I still managed to keep the bell, and didn't lose face in front of my subordinates. However, just as Minato was about to relax, Obito, who had released the ninjutsu earlier, appeared beside him at some point. Obito thought to himself, Minato-sensei, you taught me that one must not be distracted during a battle. Without hesitation, he reached for the bell at Minato's waist again. Minato Namikaze couldn't help but smile wryly. He hadn't expected that Obito could still move after unleashing 3 ninjutsu of that intensity in succession. This time, he was careless. He instinctively wanted to use the Flying Thunder God technique again, but after thinking about it, he decided against it. If he used it again, where would he put his face? Brush. Quote, the next moment, Obito had already grabbed the 2 bells and taken them away. Kakashi and Rin, seeing this, immediately showed a hint of joy. Obito raised the bell, shook it, and looked at Minato, who was no longer in an attacking stance. Mr. Minato, did we pass? Minato Namikaze smiled slightly and nodded. To be honest, your performance far exceeded my expectations. I declare you all qualified. Yay! Rin cheered and ran back from a distance, grabbing Obito and Kakashi's hands. From now on, we are official members of Class 7. Please take care of us. Obito sensed Rin's happiness. Because Rin and Kakashi often spent time with him, they matured considerably, but it was only at this moment that he truly felt the girl's liveliness. This feeling is actually not bad. Obito squinted. Minato, beaming, said, now that Team 7 is officially formed, we must have a commemorative photo. Let's go to the photo studio tomorrow morning and take a picture. Remember not to be late. Lin nodded, then asked curiously, so, Minato-sensei, what do we do now? Minato Namikaze pondered for a moment. After the assessment, we'll have a debriefing. I'll analyze the shortcomings in your combat and, incidentally, develop a follow-up training plan. First and foremost is teamwork. You all performed exceptionally well in this area, even surpassing many long-established teams. I have nothing more to guide you on. Secondly, it's about personal ability. Minato Namikaze looked at Rin. Rin, I heard you're learning medical ninjutsu. I'll find you some advanced medical ninjutsu scrolls. You can continue to improve in this area. As the team's medic, you consciously protected yourself during the battle just now, which is excellent. Judging from our squad's composition, excluding you, we're a highly mobile team. For routine missions, we'll take the initiative. Your job is to continue improving your survivability. As long as you don't get into danger, we can easily attack and retreat at any time, and you'll heal us afterward. This greatly ensures the team's overall survivability. Lin nodded and said, don't worry, Minato-sensei, I understand my responsibilities. I also know that in battle, a support character like me would be the enemy's primary target. I will protect myself. Minato nodded, then looked at Kakashi. Episode 32, the so-called elite Jonin. Kakashi, you truly are a genius. If you hadn't met me, a typical Jonin would never have been able to defeat you so easily. With a little more training, you might even be promoted to a full-fledged Jonin. However, your lightning release ninjutsu had a major drawback. Due to the excessive speed, you lacked the corresponding dynamic vision, making it difficult to adjust yourself properly during the advance. This is extremely dangerous in combat, but I can tell you very clearly that my speed is no slower than your lightning release, and my vision is not necessarily better than yours. Yet, I can adjust myself at any time during an attack to launch the most effective strike. Do you know why? Kakashi looked thoughtful, recalling the battle just now, and said somewhat uncertainly, Minato-sensei, in the battle just now, you hardly used your eyesight but relied on your senses? Minato nodded. That's right. Many battles don't necessarily require seeing. You can use your body to sense them. Once you get used to sensing battles with your body, your reliance on eyesight will decrease significantly. This is the direction your training should take next. Kakashi's eyes lit up. He was already aware of the problem of his eyesight failing to keep up with the excessive speed caused by the lightning blade, and had even discussed it with Obito, but they still couldn't find an effective solution. Now he suddenly understood. His father had once told him that sometimes you can win a battle not by watching, but by listening. He didn't quite understand then, but he does now. Kakashi nodded emphatically. Minato-sensei, I know how to train from here on out. Obito listened to Minato's guidance from the side and gained a lot of insight. In his past life, Minato-sensei didn't mention these things when Team 7 was formed. Was it because Kakashi hadn't yet used the lightning blade at that time? That's right. With the interference of this reborn individual, Kakashi consciously started developing the lightning blade ahead of time, so his progress was naturally much faster than in his previous life. In comparison, when the Reikuri was formed in his previous life, they were already working on the Kanabai Bridge mission. He quickly gave his eyes to Kakashi, solving Kakashi's problem of insufficient dynamic vision, so Kakashi's training direction was naturally different. So, for speed-type ninjas without the Sharingan in battle, is it more about sensing with the body than seeing with the eyes? This might be the correct way for Kakashi to train. Obito couldn't help but ponder. While his Sharingan had greatly aided Kakashi, even allowing Kakashi to earn the reputation of the copy ninja, it had also, to some extent, limited Kakashi's development. As Obito pondered, Minato looked at him. Obito, your fire release ninjutsu is quite good. It can densely cover the battlefield. Even if it can't effectively kill powerful ninjas, it can create excellent opportunities for your teammates. It's a perfect match for Kakashi. But, Minato paused, somewhat hesitant. Your timing was impeccable. First, you dodged my first attack, then used body flicker technique. Even earlier, you seized the opening after my attack to steal the bell, even forcing me to use Flying Thunder God technique. All of this was perfectly timed. Obito, your fighting style isn't like that of a ninjutsu-based ninja, it's more like a close-quarters speed-based style, isn't it? Obito nodded. Yes, I'm actually a melee fighter. With his intangible form, when fighting truly powerful opponents, he doesn't rely much on ninjutsu. Instead, he gets close to find opportunities, absorbing the enemy's attacks or dodging them, and then waiting for the enemy's moves to come to a head before attacking them. In this life, he naturally strengthens and trains on this foundation. Minato said seriously, although I don't know where your combat experience came from, it's almost perfect. Even if I were to use your abilities, I couldn't possibly do better than you. Therefore, I can't guide you in that aspect. What you need right now is a powerful ninjutsu that can maximize your talent for finding weaknesses, a decisive factor in your overall strength. I do have that kind of ninjutsu. You just saw it. It's my instantaneous teleportation technique, the Flying Thunder God technique, a space-time ninjutsu created by the second Hokage, Tobirama Senju. But this technique isn't something everyone can learn. I need to apply to higher authorities. If it's approved, I can teach it to you. With your skill in using the substitution jutsu just now, there's a 30% chance you can learn it. At this point in Minato's speech, Rin couldn't help but interject. Minato-sensei, even with Obito's abilities, the probability is only 30%? Minato Namikaze smiled wryly. Yes, there's only a 30% chance. The Flying Thunder God technique is a very complex jutsu. Even though Obito had a good foundation, he only met a portion of the learning requirements. To learn this technique, one also needs a strong spatial awareness. Otherwise, it's almost impossible to use in actual combat. I'm not sure if Obito possesses that. Kakashi and Rin were taken aback, then looked at each other with strange expressions. They had witnessed Obito's bizarre spacetime ninjutsu. It would be strange if Obito didn't have spatial perception abilities. So, was Obito's preparation over the past few years actually for learning this technique? Lin immediately became dreamy. Then, Minato-sensei, if Obito learned this technique, how strong would he be? Minato smiled slightly. Obito, like Kakashi, possesses strength almost comparable to a Jonin. If he learns this technique, there's a high chance he could leap to become an elite Jonin, or even an elite among elite Jonin. Elite Jonin, Rin and Kakashi exclaimed in surprise. Minato chuckled. Strictly speaking, ninja ranks are only Genin, Chunin, Jonin, and a special Jonin, unique to Konoha, who possess certain Jonin abilities but haven't yet been promoted to Jonin. But, because there are differences even among Jonin, those Jonin who have made a name for themselves in the ninja world, earned their own titles, and are no longer comparable to ordinary Jonin can be called elite Jonin. Lin asked curiously, and who are the elite among the elite Jonin? Minato's eyes were deep. As you all know, the Kage of the 5 great nations are usually the strongest ninja from their villages. But even the Kage grow old or die one day, and then a new Kage must be chosen. So, from which ninja should the new kage be chosen? Kakashi was taken aback, then glanced at Obito and said, so, the kage are chosen from the elite among the Jonin? Minato Namikaze nodded. That's right. Actually, you can judge it this way. Generally, a Jonin who has their own title can be called an elite Jonin. If that title is strong enough, even legendary, then such an elite Jonin is the cream of the crop among elite Jonin. For example, Minato said slowly, the legendary Sannin of Konoha, or titles like Sakumo Hatake of Konoha. Minato smiled. Hearing such a title, you should be able to clearly sense that they are different from ordinary Jonin, right? Rin nodded. This kind of ninja was almost like a legendary ninja, and it didn't even sound that far off from the kage of a village. That's why she admired Tsunade so much, because Tsunade was known as the strongest female ninja. Kakashi, on the other hand, looked injured. How could he not know how strong his father was? He was even considered the most likely successor to the fourth Hokage, but unfortunately. Episode 33 Minato's Misunderstanding. It was only then that Minato belatedly realized that Kakashi was the son of White Fang. Seeing this, he said embarrassedly, sorry, Kakashi, I didn't mean to mention White Fang senpai. Kakashi shook his head. It's alright, Minato sensei. I won't dwell on the sadness of the past. The fact that you mentioned father shows he was a strong person even you acknowledge. I should be happy. Minato Namikaze was surprised by Kakashi's open-mindedness and laughed. Kakashi, your father was a true powerhouse, and I believe you will become as strong as him someday. Actually, I'll tell you a secret. After hearing about your father's situation, I have great respect for him and don't think he did anything wrong. Kakashi was suddenly moved. Was this what Obito meant by the sun in everyone's eyes? Mr. Minato is indeed a good teacher. Rin, standing nearby, noticed something else. Her eyes sparkled. Minato-sensei, you just said that if Obito learns the Flying Thunder God technique, he could potentially become an elite Jonin. Doesn't that mean he could be as powerful as the legendary Sannin of Konoha? Minato Namikaze hesitated. Perhaps it's still not as good. After all, the Sannin are all veteran ninjas with a vast amount of knowledge. The gap in experience isn't so easily bridged. But a ninja's strength isn't calculated that way. Ninja duels involve all sorts of variables, such as intelligence and ability counters, all of which can lead to different final outcomes. Minato slowly said, therefore, in my opinion, the so-called elite Jonin are those who excel in a particular area, to the point that they cannot be countered by ordinary means. Take me for example. Although Jiraiya-sensei is very powerful, he's not as good as me in terms of mobility. If I can fully utilize this strength in a battle, even Jiraiya-sensei wouldn't be able to defeat me. I might even have a chance to defeat him. So why wouldn't someone like me be an elite among the Jonin? The same applies to Obito. If he had mastered the Flying Thunder God technique, he would have possessed the strength to contend with truly powerful individuals, remaining undefeated and even inflicting damage. He would have been more than capable of becoming an elite among the Jonin. Lin nodded, her eyes filled with anticipation. Although she knew Obito was very strong, capable of declaring war on the Five Kage and fighting against the entire world single-handedly. However, many of Obito's abilities rely on his eyes, and using his eyes has serious side effects, so Rin doesn't want Obito to use them frequently. From Minato, she saw the possibility that Obito, even without using those eyes, could rival a powerful figure. How could she not have high hopes for that? Kakashi noticed another detail in Minato's words and couldn't help but ask a question. Minato-sensei, are you Jiraiya-sama's disciple? Minato nodded. Yes, Jiraiya-sensei is my mentor. I learned a great deal from him, which enabled me to grow to my current level. Kakashi sincerely thanked him, saying, I see. Thank you, Minato-sensei. Your explanation today has given me a deeper understanding of how to become Hokage. Minato, somewhat embarrassed, chuckled. Don't you all doubt the truth of my claim that I possess the strength to defeat Jiraiya-sensei? After all, I'm not that famous right now. Obito smiled but didn't say anything. Just kidding. In his eyes, Minato-sensei is much more difficult to deal with than Jiraiya-sama. Although the Third Shinobi World War hasn't started yet, and Minato might not be as strong as he is in the future, just as he said, once a ninja masters a method that others cannot counter, then he cannot be judged by common sense. He couldn't counter the Mangekyou Sharingan's Kamui's intangibility ability, and he wasn't afraid of the Rinnegan, which was even more advanced than the Mangekyou. Rin and Kakashi had no objections. They had long known that this person would become the fourth Hokage, who was the kage of a village. It would be strange if he wasn't strong. Seeing the unsurprised looks on the three men's faces, Minato couldn't help but feel a little moved. I didn't expect my disciples to trust me so much. Then, he looked at Kakashi. Kakashi, you're so interested in becoming Hokage, so are you also working towards that goal? Kakashi denied it, saying, no, I don't have a strong desire to become Hokage. I just suddenly remembered a guy who used to shout that he wanted to become Hokage when we were kids, and I wanted to judge how difficult it would be for him to become Hokage. Obito snorted. Kakashi, do you think I can't hear you? Minato smiled and looked at Obito. So, Obito wants to become Hokage? That's an excellent ambition, but I must remind you, strength alone isn't enough to become Hokage. You also need the approval of the entire village. Obito's eyes suddenly showed a hint of sadness. Minato-sensei, becoming Hokage was indeed my childhood dream, but now, I've entrusted that dream to someone else. I don't want to become Hokage anymore. Minato Namikaze was taken aback and couldn't help but ask, why? Obito's expression turned wistful. Perhaps I'm not worthy, or perhaps I've come to understand many things. Becoming Hokage isn't such a big deal after all. In short, the person I entrusted my dream to is more qualified to be Hokage than I am. Minato's curiosity grew even stronger. Obito, although I don't know what happened that made you no longer want to become Hokage, the person you entrust your dreams to must be someone very important in your life, right? Obito looked at Minato, and the image of Naruto flashed through his mind, the same sunny and cheerful personality, the same blonde hair, and the same immense strength. Minato-sensei, he's a lot like me when I was little. We were rivals for a long time, I guess. I was convinced by him, but I'm sorry, Minato-sensei, I can't tell you who he is right now. I can only tell you that he is also a very important person in your life. Minato was surprised that Obito would give such an answer. Someone very important in my life? No, it's probably also related to your guilt towards me, isn't it? Obito nodded. Yes, his tragedy was caused by me, and that's the root of my guilt. In any case, I will tell Minato-sensei the truth little by little in the future. Minato Namikaze suddenly realized a possibility, and his brow furrowed slightly. That person wouldn't have the surname Uzumaki, would they? Obito remained silent for a moment, which was taken as tacit agreement. This time, Minato Namikaze was no longer calm. His dream is to become Hokage, his surname is Uzumaki, and he has a very important person in his life. I'm sorry, Obito, it seems you need to make things clear. If it's that person, I won't let any information slip by. Minato Namikaze's expression turned serious. Obito shook his head. Don't worry, Minato-sensei, the person I'm talking about isn't Kushina. But, just like my guilt towards you, my guilt towards Sister Kushina is even greater. But I can't tell you the reason yet. Episode 34 The Disappearance of the Senju Clan. Kakashi and Rin watched from the sidelines, shaking their heads in disbelief. Obito was also suffering in silence. Rin couldn't help but say, Minato-sensei, don't worry. Obito hasn't done anything to harm anyone yet, especially not to your wife. It's just that his situation is a bit special, and I'll explain it to you later. Minato Namikaze finally breathed a sigh of relief. As long as it doesn't harm Kushina, he can forgive anything else. Thinking this, he laughed and said, alright, since you won't tell me now, I won't press you. I originally thought I'd need to introduce my fiancé to you, but it seems that's unnecessary. How about we have dinner at my place? Kushina's cooking is pretty good, isn't it? Rin rejected the suggestion. Minato-sensei, although I'd love to try your wife's cooking. Look, Obito reacts like this when he sees you, but I'm afraid of him when he sees your wife. The worry in Lin's eyes was evident. Minato glanced at Obito and, seeing that he was trembling all over, could only sigh. I see. Then let's not let Kushina and Obito meet for the time being. Let's change the location for tonight's dinner party to outside. Today is the founding day of Class 7, so I'll treat everyone to a nice meal. Really? Minato-sensei is amazing. Rin exclaimed, her eyes sparkling with anticipation. Minato Namikaze nodded. It's still early, everyone disperse. I'm going to the Hokage building to apply for instruction on the Flying Thunder God technique. Let's meet outside the Hokage building at 6 p.m. tonight. No one objected. Seeing this, Minato instantly left without any hesitation. After Minato Namikaze left, Rin looked at Obito with concern. Obito, didn't you say you were mentally prepared? Why is it still like this? Obito, breathing heavily, said, I thought I could face it calmly, but after actually seeing Minato-sensei, I realized I'm truly pathetic. Rin didn't say anything more, she just held Obito's hand. Obito, what will I do if you die? Obito, tears streaming down his face, said, Rin, I'm so sorry. I owe Minato's family so much. They could have been happy, they didn't even need me to do anything, just leave their world. Rin said earnestly, Obito, you don't need to do anything. Just be an excellent disciple. That way, your teacher and his wife will be proud of their disciple's success. Obito murmured, that's precisely why my guilt is so intense. How can I be worthy of my master and mistress's pride? Rin shook her head. Obito, I know you want to atone for your sins, but you mustn't rush things. Since you've decided to shoulder everything and save the world, you need to stay calm even more now. Otherwise, you might end up doing nothing well and saving nothing. Rin's words gradually calmed Obito's aura. After a while, he returned to normal and smiled. Thank you, Rin. I really can't let myself wallow in self-pity because of Minato-sensei. Kakashi, standing nearby, suddenly said, Obito, why didn't you tell Minato everything immediately, like you did with us? Knowing Minato's personality, I believe he would forgive you. Obito smiled wryly. Kakashi, you're still so naive. Look what Minato-sensei did first thing. Kakashi glanced at the Hokage building. Hokage building, report? What's the problem? Obito's eyes flickered. I trust Minato-sensei, I trust you all, but I don't trust Hiruzen Sarutobi. Knowing Minato-sensei's personality, if I tell him everything, he might just tell the third Hokage everything verbatim. I don't know what measures the third generation will take after they know everything. I'm not afraid myself, but you are also in the know, and I'm afraid you'll be implicated. For a moment, none of the three knew what to say. After a while, Rin looked at Kakashi and asked the question she had been wanting to ask. Kakashi, you're already a Chunin, you should have gathered a lot of information. Was the third Hokage really, that kind of person, as Obito said? Kakashi's expression was complicated. The third Hokage didn't seem that bad to me, but based on the information I've gathered, in what Obito said, the third Hokage certainly didn't play a virtuous role. Lin's breathing quickened. Even the disappearance of the Senju clan. Kakashi said, bewildered, I don't know, I really don't know. I only found out that the Senju clan did indeed abandon their surname and integrate into the village, but even if some people gave up their surnames, the villagers still remembered them, and these people either died in accidents on the front lines during World War II, or mysteriously disappeared. Lin immediately deflated. Kakashi, Obito once asked you, do you believe this is a coincidence? What's your answer now? Kakashi gave a wry smile. Rin, Obito asked you the same question, so do you believe him? The two were rendered speechless. Seeing this, Obito comforted him, saying, all right, I believe it's a coincidence. If it's not a coincidence, then it was Danzo who did it. Danzo? Kakashi's eyes flashed wildly. The root organization in Konoha wields immense power and is extremely unreasonable. Many people actually dislike this organization because many have been persecuted by them. This is the information I found. Rin didn't understand. Why would Konoha have such an organization? Kakashi said, perhaps, as Obito said, things aren't always black and white. Konoha needs darkness for light, but at least now I feel absolutely no qualms about taking action against Danzo. He really did a lot of disgusting things. Obito said seriously, alright, I've already arranged Danzo's end. He won't live for many more years. Compared to Danzo, my plan is about to begin. What plan? The two couldn't help but ask. Obito whispered, the Hashirama cell transplantation plan. If possible, I'd like to get one for you too. Unfortunately, Hashirama cells are extremely potent. Only those with Uchiha blood or the Sharingan can suppress them. The two nodded, not particularly surprised. Over the years, Obito has gradually revealed a lot of information, including the fact that Hashirama's cells can resolve the side effects of the Mangekyou Sharingan. Obito, be careful in everything. Actually, we don't need to be in such a hurry. Lin reminded her. Obito became serious. I can't afford to be in a hurry. The person behind the scenes who led me to my downfall in my past life is a hidden danger. Before the transplant of Hashirama's cells, I don't even want you to know his name, but after the transplant, I can tell you everything. Kakashi nodded. So he possesses immense power, requiring you to use the Mangekyou Sharingan to defeat him. With Hashirama's cells, you can use the Mangekyou Sharingan without worry, and he won't be in so much danger? Obito said, that's right. Of course, he might not be very strong, but he is indeed very dangerous, and we must be wary of him. Kakashi stopped trying to persuade him, but Rin asked, Obito, when will your plan begin? Obito glanced at the sky and already had a plan in mind. There's no time like the present, let's do it tonight. Episode 35, was it just that the house was built sturdily? Starting tonight. Obito, you seem to be in a hurry, but isn't this a bit too rushed? Lin was very worried. As always, Obito held Rin's small hand tightly, offering words of comfort. Lin, nothing unexpected will happen. After all, I still need to create a world where everyone can live happily, and I won't risk my safety until that goal is achieved. Rin was relieved. With Obito's words, she felt reassured. She smiled slightly. If that's the case, then Obito, I believe in you and support you. Obito nodded, then said seriously, Rin, my plan is actually very simple, to cooperate with those who possess Hashirama's cells. He turned to Kakashi. Kakashi, do you know why I ask you to keep an eye on the disappearance of the Senju clan? Kakashi paused, then hesitated before asking, wasn't I supposed to see the third Hokage's true nature? Obito nodded. That's true, but there's another purpose. To determine where the experiment is at. An experiment? Rin and Kakashi looked completely confused. Obito slowly said, as I said before, the first Hokage, Hashirama Senju, was only one step away from reaching the level of the Sage of Six Paths. He was a true god of ninjas. He's incredibly strong enough to easily quell wars and establish a peaceful ninja village, strong enough that no other Senju clan member possesses such power. Therefore, after his death, his body was recovered by Konoha. In order to understand why he was so strong and to create another ninja god, the village began conducting various experiments on Hashirama's cells. Because Hashirama Senju's bloodline limit is wood release, these experiments are also known as wood release experiments. But isn't that defiling the dead? Lin felt somewhat uncomfortable. Obito's tone was laced with sarcasm. Many people will do anything to gain power. They'll defile the dead, and they'll even dissect the living. Furthermore, the one who initially decided to study the first Hokage's cells was none other than the first Hokage's younger brother, our second Hokage, Tobirama Senju. Lin's mouth opened slightly. It's unbelievable that the one who committed such a defilement was Hashirama's own younger brother and also the former Hokage of Konoha. For a moment, Lin didn't know what to say. Kakashi, standing nearby, frowned deeply. So those experiments haven't stopped yet? Obito chuckled. Of course not. Look how weak Konoha is right now. The weaker Konoha is, the more it tries to strengthen itself through external forces. Kakashi completely lost his composure. So, those missing Senju clan members were involved in these experiments? What happened to them afterward? Obito's eyes were deep. He's probably dead. What, all of them? Obito, do you know how many missing people I've investigated? Are you kidding me? Obito chuckled. Hashirama cells aren't that easy to transplant. Most people, if they can't suppress the wood release chakra contained within Hashirama cells, will instantly turn into a tree. It wouldn't be accurate to say they all died. One person survived and successfully mastered the power of wood release. That person was about your or my age, named Tenzo, who will later be renamed Yamato. Was only one survivor? Kakashi's face turned pale. One experiment killed at least hundreds of people, all of them villagers from Konoha. Why wasn't this experiment stopped? Obito thought for a moment. Actually, openly, it should be about to be stopped, or has already been stopped. Of course, secretly, with the results achieved, Danzo will only become more insane. Anyway, the war is about to start, and there are plenty of people. Kakashi took a deep breath, his eyes blazing with murderous intent. Obito, I'm really getting more and more eager to kill Danzo. Konoha is just as you said. Beneath the light, there is only darkness. At this moment, Rin, standing to the side, was filled with worry. Obito, you didn't tell me beforehand that so many people would die from transplanting Hashirama cells. Even so, are you still going to do it? Obito chuckled. As I said before, the Sharingan can suppress Hashirama cells. In my past life, half my body was crushed, and I only survived thanks to Hashirama cells. So, while Hashirama cells might be deadly poison to others, they are a life-saving medicine for me. Lin finally breathed a sigh of relief. Obito looked at Kakashi. Actually, Kakashi, I don't think the wood release experiment was too excessive. After all, it was approved by the third Hokage. With the third Hokage involved, Danzo wouldn't dare to act recklessly. Most of the Senju clan members who participated in the experiment did so voluntarily. They willingly sacrificed their lives to strengthen their village. Kakashi smiled wryly. But that's hundreds of lives, and perhaps even more hidden. Obito patted Kakashi on the shoulder. You haven't actually been on a battlefield yet. Although you've probably killed quite a few people while doing missions in recent years, you still haven't experienced the cruelty of war. That's true hell. Let alone hundreds, even tens of thousands would be like weeds, ready to be harvested at any moment. Therefore, if sacrificing a few hundred lives can protect the village, perhaps it's not such a high price to pay. Kakashi was stunned, muttering to himself, is that so? At that moment, Kakashi suddenly understood why Obito was so committed to peace. Beside her, Rin asked curiously, Obito, didn't you just say that one of the test subjects survived and even mastered the power of wood release? So, could he become the second god of shinobi? Obito couldn't help but laugh. It's not that simple. In my past life, I also received Hashirama's cells and mastered wood release. But in high-level situations, while it wasn't useless, it was very limited. The truly powerful element wasn't wood release bloodline limit, but Hashirama Senju himself. The surviving Yamato was in the same situation. His wood release ninjutsu was far less powerful than Hashirama's. However, he could use wood release to build a house in an instant, making it incredibly sturdy, a practically essential ninjutsu for home and travel. Perhaps even Hashirama couldn't match him in this aspect. Rin couldn't help but chuckle. Obito, after you transplant Hashirama's cells, you should learn this trick too. Kakashi wore a helpless expression and sighed heavily. So, after paying the price of so many deaths, all we got was a sturdier house. Episode 36 permits to teach the Flying Thunder God technique. Seeing this, Obito couldn't help but interrupt. Alright, Kakashi, stop reminiscing. Anyway, Konoha has Hashirama's cells and experimental data. I just need to cooperate with the relevant personnel to obtain them. Kakashi's expression turned serious. So, Obito, are you going to cooperate with Danzo? Obito thought for a moment. It's also a way out, but we don't need it for now, because there are other people involved in this experiment. Kakashi asked, who is it? Looking at the two curious individuals, Obito slowly uttered a name, Orochimaru. What? Quote, although everyone knew that Obito's information was of paramount importance, no one expected that Orochimaru, one of the legendary Sannin of Konoha, would also participate in this wood release experiment. Obito continued, in fact, Orochimaru not only participated, but was also the primary experimenter. Without his help, Danzo probably wouldn't have even had that one successful case. Kakashi gave a wry smile. So, Obito, you're planning to team up with Orochimaru-sama? Obito said, he's the best person to talk to. If I can offer him something he's interested in, he might give me whatever I want. Rin was somewhat disappointed. I didn't expect even Lord Orochimaru to be like that. I hope Lady Tsunade won't be. Obito looked at Rin and said, Rin, Orochimaru is actually a very pure person. It's inappropriate to judge him simply as good or evil. I only realized this after I died and went to the underworld. As for Lady Tsunade, Obito chuckled. She's a truly kind person. Lin finally shed the intense insecurity she had felt earlier. After a while, Obito chatted with the two of them a bit more about his plans. Then, seeing that it was still early, the three of them began training at the training ground. Meanwhile, on the other side, at the Hokage building, Minato Namikaze reported the situation of Team 7 to Hiruzen Sarutobi. Hiruzen Sarutobi exclaimed in surprise, what? You're saying Obito and Kakashi are close to becoming Jonin, and Rin has Chunin level strength? Minato nodded. That's right, they are all exceptionally talented, far exceeding my expectations, especially Obito. His fundamentals are incredibly solid, reminding me of my younger self. Although he hasn't awakened the Sharingan, I think he has the aptitude to learn that technique. A glint flashed in Hiruzen Sarutobi's eyes. You mean, Obito actually has the aptitude to learn the Flying Thunder God technique? Minato Namikaze said solemnly, therefore, I implore the third Hokage to allow me to try teaching the Flying Thunder God technique. I also want Rin and Kakashi to give it a try. Hiruzen Sarutobi's joy was gradually replaced by worry. Rin and Kakashi wanting to learn this technique is fine, but Obito just happens to be an Uchiha. Minato Namikaze noticed the third Hokage's worry and smiled. Third Hokage, Obito is different from other Uchiha I've met. He's a good kid. I've read the information you gave me. He's helped almost all the elderly people in the village. The third Hokage picked up his pipe, took a deep drag, and after a moment's thought, murmured, Obito? He's definitely different. He's an Uchiha who possesses the will of fire. After much internal struggle, the third generation finally made a decision. Minato, from now on, you'll make your own decisions regarding the Flying Thunder God technique. You don't need to ask me anymore. Minato Namikaze smiled and said, then I won't disturb the third Hokage any longer. After saying this, he was about to take his leave when suddenly, Hiruzen Sarutobi called out to him. Wait, Minato. How's things going with Kushina lately? Minato paused for a moment, then smiled and said, we're already engaged, and we'll probably get married soon. The third Hokage breathed a sigh of relief, hesitated for a moment, and then spoke. Minato, you know, Kushina is the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki, a vital fighting force for the village. If the battle escalates to a fever pitch, the third Hokage was interrupted by Minato Namikaze before he could finish speaking. At that moment, his face was filled with determination and confidence. Lord Hokage, don't worry, that day will never come. If it does, I'm confident I can end the war alone. Hiruzen Sarutobi smiled slightly. Is that so? Then Minato, you'd better work hard. This war might also be an opportunity. Minato Namikaze was taken aback. He was a smart man and suddenly realized that there seemed to be a deeper meaning in the third Hokage's words. However, he couldn't quite make out what it was, so he could only say, I'll try my best. Alright, you may leave. The third Hokage waved his hand. Minato responded and vanished in an instant. Once Minato left, the third Hokage got up and unconsciously went to the window again, muttering to himself, Minato, I hope you can seize this opportunity. Then, he sighed and thought of his disciple Orochimaru. Orochimaru, you've been getting too close to Danzo. I clearly told you to stop the experiments, but you. On the other side, at the training ground, Kakashi and Obito have clashed countless times. Because Obito activated his 3-tomo form and used holification, Kakashi was defeated once again without any doubt. Kakashi was about to lose his composure. That's blatant cheating. Why didn't you use that move in front of Minato-sensei? Obito chuckled. Kakashi, the enemy won't reason with you. Just now in front of Minato-sensei, I simply didn't want to reveal my Sharingan too early. Otherwise, having these eyes would arouse suspicion from the higher-ups. Kakashi was still unconvinced. If his vocabulary weren't so limited, he probably would have already blurted out the words, holified dog. Seeing Kakashi's expression, Obito immediately guessed what he was thinking. I've said it so many times, there are ways to break through invisibility. If they seize the moment I attack, I can't dodge it. Kakashi, in war, we will always encounter all kinds of tough opponents. Fighting me will help you face various situations in the future. Kakashi thought about it for a moment and agreed that it made sense. Obito told him that Minato had analyzed the weakness of holification in an instant, and then seized that weakness in the next moment of their battle. If Minato-sensei could do that, then why couldn't he? However, glancing at the sky, Kakashi said, let's fight another time. Let's meet at the Hokage building first, it's getting late. Nearby, Rin, who was practicing chakra control, also stood up, her eyes filled with anticipation. Kakashi is right, I can't wait to have a big meal. Obito naturally wouldn't disagree with Rin. Then let's go eat first. I have things to do tonight. And so, the three of them left the training ground together and enjoyed a delicious meal with Minato. Episode 37 Deceiving Orochimaru. A secret experiment takes place in Konoha village at night. The surroundings were pitch black and silent, a stark contrast to the brightly lit downtown area not far away. A pale-skinned figure dressed in a white robe emerged from the laboratory. If any Konoha ninja were present, they would recognize him as Orochimaru, one of the legendary Sannin. At this moment, Orochimaru's mood was far from pleasant. The development of the immortality technique was encountering one obstacle after another. His recent wood release experiments, conducted in collaboration with Danzo, had also been forced to be conducted covertly due to Sarutobi's intervention. He walked along, lost in thought. If he wanted to break free from death and achieve immortality, did he have to resort to that forbidden art? That technique, developed by the second Hokage Tobirama Senju, can, in a sense, revive the dead. Such a technique would surely inspire him greatly, but it was a technique that Sarutobi-sensei had strictly forbidden him from researching. Once he started, there might be no turning back. Has he really made up his mind? As Orochimaru was undecided, suddenly, the surrounding space distorted, and a figure abruptly appeared in front of him. A look of horror flashed in Orochimaru's eyes. This was a space-time ninjutsu. Without the flying thunder god seal and without relying on external objects, it is an extremely sophisticated space-time ninjutsu. Orochimaru instantly became alert, his vertical pupils narrowing as he stared intently at the figure that had appeared out of nowhere. The newcomer had long hair, wore a dark brown cloak that covered his entire body, and a white mask on his head. He exuded a cold and ominous aura. This aura was both mysterious and ancient, and accompanied by a sense of danger, which suddenly excited Orochimaru. Sir, did you come here specifically to see me? Orochimaru chuckled eerily. My laboratory is extremely well hidden. It's quite remarkable that you were able to find me. May I ask your identity, sir? Who has dared to show your face? The masked man spoke slowly, his voice filled with an indescribable sense of vicissitude. You don't need to know who I am. I'm just a long-forgotten ghost of the ninja world, but you do possess something that interests me. I'd like to make a deal with you. A trade? Let me guess. Orochimaru sneered. Is something worthy of an ancient spirit's attention? Hashirama cells? Are you from the same era as Lord Hashirama? The masked man's voice was devoid of any emotion. No need to guess. I can tell you that I live in an era even earlier than Hashirama's. All traces of my existence should have vanished by now. If Hashirama were to truly rank me, he might have to call me Grandpa. Is that so? This is getting more and more interesting. Orochimaru's eyes held a mixture of suspicion and inquiry. I do have Hashirama cells, but why should I give them to you? You have ulterior motives, sneaking into Konoha in the dead of night. Should I detain you and find out your origins? After saying that, Orochimaru licked his lips, and the next moment, he made his move without warning. Suddenly, his arms transformed into a group of white snakes, which abruptly darted towards the masked man. This is a highly proficient ninjutsu developed by Orochimaru, Hidden Shadow Snake Hands. Orochimaru didn't expect to defeat this powerful individual who had mastered advanced space-time ninjutsu with this move. He was merely testing the waters. He was curious to see how the other party would respond. However, to Orochimaru's disappointment, the other party stood still, motionless, and even spoke. Such probing is meaningless to me, Junior. As the masked man spoke, the Shadow Snake Hands attack arrived, but Orochimaru felt as if he had struck a phantom. After several attempts, his white snakes passed right through the figure. The figure was clearly standing in front of him, yet it seemed as if it didn't exist. Is this a clone technique or an illusion? Is the figure before me just a fake? Orochimaru couldn't help but ponder. However, at that moment, the illusory figure moved and grabbed a white snake that he couldn't retract in time. No, it's not an illusion. Orochimaru's pupils constricted sharply. This person was actually real. This ability was something Orochimaru had never seen before, and even he found it troublesome. It seems you truly are a senior figure. I apologize for any offense I may have caused. Orochimaru readily admitted defeat. In fact, he was mainly curious about the masked man. The masked man shrugged. You juniors, I've already told you, I'm just a forgotten spirit. Because I've been forgotten, this world can be real or it can be an illusion to me. Truth and illusion are merely a matter of a single thought. Orochimaru broke out in a cold sweat. He didn't believe what the other man said. If he was really that powerful, what difference would there be between him and a god? Why would he need to come to him? But the other party's abilities are indeed quite strange. Then, senior, let's have a proper discussion about the deal. Do you have anything that could interest me? The masked man seemed to be struggling with something, making a gesture of pinching his chin in deep thought, and then he seemed to have made up his mind. So, what are you interested in? Why don't you tell me? Maybe I happen to know something about it? Orochimaru licked his lips. Really? I'm quite interested in you, senior. If what you say is true, then you've lived for over 100 years, haven't you? The masked man feigned reproach, saying, asking an old person's age is hardly polite. But young man, are you interested in longevity? I can grant your wish. Orochimaru chuckled. It's less about being interested in longevity and more about being interested in immortality. If you can grant my wish, Hashirama's cells aren't out of the question. The masked man shook his head. Junior, you seem to have misunderstood something. Hashirama cells. I need them. I can take them myself. I guarantee you can't stop me. Orochimaru felt a chill run down his spine. He could tell that the other person wasn't lying. They were simply stating a fact. You're quite confident, aren't you? So, what else do you want? The most valuable knowledge is the knowledge in your mind, especially about interstitial cells. I see. Orochimaru remained calm. It's just some knowledge. If you can exchange it for the same knowledge, I'd be happy to. The masked man gestured thoughtfully again. I actually know quite a bit about immortality. The masked man held up one finger. First, there's a secret technique in Takigakure called Earth Grudge Fear. It allows you to steal the hearts of others and use them for your own purposes. You can have a total of 5 hearts. Theoretically, as long as all 5 hearts are alive, the person won't die. These hearts can be replaced. If one loses its vitality, you can simply replace it with a more viable one. A thought suddenly flashed through Orochimaru's mind, and he involuntarily repeated the masked man's last words. It has lost its vitality, so replace it with a fresher one. A heart can be replaced, but what about the body? As the body ages, can it be replaced with a more vibrant one? Episode 38. Lin slept next to him. Orochimaru suddenly felt that he had found a direction for his immortality technique. He licked his lips and chuckled softly. Senior, the Earth Grudge Fear of Takigakure is on the bounty hunter Kakuzu. I know a little about him. He's a very dangerous person. The masked man chuckled. That's your problem. All the information I give you is guaranteed to be accurate. Orochimaru, filled with curiosity, said, as you've said before, there's more than one way to achieve immortality. The masked man chuckled. What a greedy junior, huh? Oh well. The masked man extended another finger. the second one. Have you heard of the puppetry techniques of Sanagakure? Orochimaru was taken aback, then smiled darkly. Can puppetry achieve immortality? The masked man said, of course, puppetry can turn living people into puppets. This technique is called human puppetry, and the highest level of human puppetry is to turn oneself into a puppet as well. You understand what I mean? Orochimaru could no longer suppress the upward curve of his lips. I understand. By turning myself into a puppet, I can avoid aging. Senior truly lives up to his reputation as someone who has lived for a very long time. Just a few words have given me great inspiration. But, is there anything else? Hey, kid, don't be so greedy. Do I look like the kind of person who would share knowledge for free? The masked man pointed to himself. Orochimaru, with a knowing look on his face, took out 2 scrolls from his robes and tossed them over. Senior, one scroll contains Hashirama cells, and the other scroll contains data from some wood release experiments. Of course, it's incomplete. The masked man took the scroll and casually tucked it into his pocket. I believe you, just as I haven't lied to you. You have no need to lie to me. After all, lying to me comes at a great price. The masked man slowly extended his third finger. How do you compare animals to plants? Orochimaru exclaimed. Interesting, very interesting. The lifespan of animals is negligible compared to that of some plants. The masked man slowly said, I know a technique that can transform a person into a kind of plant form. It's very similar to the wood release technique you've been researching. Furthermore, someone has already successfully performed this transformation. I have it ready-made. Orochimaru was now quite agitated. He licked his lips and said, if you could truly provide me with a plant-like body for my experiments, I would offer you all the data from my wood release experiments. The masked man nodded. Then next time I'll bring the materials you need. I hope you'll have the information I need ready. Having said that, the masked man raised his hand and wiped it across his chest. His figure vanished as if he had wiped it away with his own hand. Orochimaru watched this scene quietly, a thoughtful expression on his face. He suddenly realized that becoming the 4th Hokage wasn't so important anymore. Perhaps it wouldn't matter if he just gave it up. Obito's family, the masked figure slowly appeared and removed his mask. Beneath the mask lies Obito's grown-up appearance. Bang! The transformation spell's effect has worn off. Obito returned to his original form. Not far away, Rin was sitting on a stool in the living room. Hearing the noise, she immediately stood up and ran over. Obito, how's it going? Rin took out a snow-white handkerchief and wiped away the blood and tears that Obito had shed. Obito pulled 2 scrolls from Orochimaru's robes from his pocket and chuckled. I've got the Hashirama cells, including some research data. Thank you, Rin, for waiting for me so late. Because Rin was very worried about Obito's actions today, she came to Obito's house specifically to wait for him, so that if anything unexpected happened, she would have someone to help and take care of him. Rin blushed slightly. That's good. I won't bother you any longer. See you tomorrow. Obito grabbed Rin's hand. Rin, it's so late, I'm worried about you going home alone. Rin turned to Obito, smiling sweetly. It's alright, if it really comes to it, you can take me back, okay? Obito lowered his head, feeling extremely guilty, his face involuntarily turning red. He whispered, Rin, why don't you stay at my place for the night? We can go take pictures together tomorrow. Rin looked at Obito gently. Obito, no, my parents will worry. Obito was momentarily disappointed. Oh, I see. Then I'll take you home. Rin nodded and walked towards the door. Just as Obito was about to follow, Rin crossed her arms behind her back, turned around, and smiled. Actually, I was worried something might happen to you, so I already told Mom and Dad that I might not be coming home tonight. Obito's eyes lit up instantly, and his breathing became rapid. So, Rin, you can really stay here? Rin thought for a moment, her tone slightly shy. Then let's stay here, but Obito, you can't have any bad intentions, otherwise. Rin raised her little fist. Obito immediately scratched his head, embarrassed, and said, what bad intentions could I possibly have? Ha ha ha. Rin, I'll prepare a makeshift bed for you right away. It was left by Grandma. He quickly took out a makeshift bed from the cabinet, set it up, and placed the new makeshift bed right next to his own. Seeing this, Rin couldn't help but say, Obito, although I often sleep like this with my parents at home, and although I said I would watch over you for the rest of my life, this is just too much. Rin paused here because she saw Obito hugging his grandmother's bedding, his face showing sadness. Obito said softly, Rin, stay with me this once. Ever since the Kanabai Bridge mission, I've been spending every night alone. I can't even remember how many years it's been. Rin's heart suddenly softened. Obito, you've succeeded this time. Don't think I don't know you're playing the victim, but this is the only time. Obito's expression instantly changed from sadness to joy. That's great, Rin. Rin gave her a knowing look. I knew it, but she didn't say anything more because what Obito said was true. With a sigh, she walked to the makeshift bed and crawled inside. Seeing this, Obito quickly turned off the lights and crawled into his own sleeping mat. The two were separated by only a small gap, and Obito could even hear Rin's slightly nervous breathing. Obito comforted her. Rin, don't worry. The fact that you're here with me like this is the greatest blessing you can give me. I don't deserve all this. This is enough. Rin calmed down and remained silent for a while before suddenly turning her head and staring intently at Obito. Obito, don't put too much pressure on yourself. Get a good night's sleep. Quote, the two of them just stared at each other like that, without saying a word, and then, without anyone noticing, they both closed their eyes. The next day, at the photo studio, Kakashi and Minato Namikaze were waiting there. The photo studio owner was getting increasingly impatient. Seriously, how long am I supposed to wait? Minato gave an embarrassed look. Sorry, I'll be there soon. Kakashi stood to the side, hands casually crossed. Obito being late was one thing, but why was Rin also? Suddenly, Kakashi seemed to have thought of something. Could it be that something unexpected happened to the plan last night? However, if anything unexpected happens, as agreed, Rin will come to find him. If she doesn't come, it means everything went smoothly. Besides that, Rin seems to have gone to wait with the Uchiha people. Could it be? Seemingly realizing a possibility, Kakashi could no longer maintain his cool expression. He rolled his dead fish eyes upwards. No way, they're only 9 years old. Episode 39 Flying Thunder God Technique. Just then, two figures appeared running hurriedly in the distance from the photo studio. It was Rin and Obito. The two ran into the photo studio. Rin gave Obito a reproachful look before putting her hands together and saying, sorry, Minato-sensei, we're late. Obito stepped forward, scratching the back of his head. Sorry, Minato-sensei, I slept so soundly I forgot to set my alarm. Seeing the two acting so in sync, Minato started wildly imagining. You two weren't together last night, were you? Rin blushed slightly. Due to special circumstances, I did stay overnight at the Uchiha village. Rin is usually a very punctual person, but last night, for some reason, she couldn't fall asleep after Obito went to sleep. Listening to Obito's steady breathing, she was in a state of turmoil. By the time she fell asleep, it was already very late, which is why, like Obito, she overslept in the morning. Obito's face flushed slightly. Haha, Rin did stay at my house one night. It's all my fault, Minato-sensei, otherwise Rin definitely wouldn't have been late. Minato shook his head, a helpless expression on his face. Although the three ninja prohibitions didn't forbid dating, and he and Kushina had actually been together since they were very young, but living together at 9 years old, isn't that too early? They probably weren't even fully grown yet. Minato advised, you're still young. You need to learn restraint and self-control. You can't be too indulgent. Rin's face immediately turned even redder than before, a deep bright red. As a medical ninja, she had learned a lot about physiology, so she naturally understood what Minato meant and immediately stammered out her answer. Nothing really happened between us, we just slept like normal. At this moment, Kakashi stepped forward, suspiciously saying, really? Obito isn't exactly a gentleman. Rin, you mustn't let him take advantage of you. Rin almost transformed into the unborn princess of the Hikaru family, her whole body steaming. Obito was extremely annoyed. Hey, Kakashi, what are you thinking? How could I possibly take advantage of Rin? Kakashi spread his hands. That's hard to say. The two were threatening to start arguing again. At this point, the photo studio owner's face grew increasingly grim, and he roared, are you going to take the photos or not? If not, get out. Minato quickly apologized. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. Then he looked at the little ones. Class 7, hurry up, gather in front of me, we're taking a picture. Obito snorted coldly, pulled Rin to Minato's side, and Kakashi, unusually, revealed a barely perceptible smile as he joined them. And so, the group gathered together, posed, and took their first photo since the formation of Class 7. Then, driven away by the photo studio owner, they fled in disarray. The next few days will be a period of peaceful cultivation. The newly formed team needed to take on a lot of low-level missions, but because Obito was well liked in the village, he could easily complete most of the tasks of finding cats and dogs with the help of various old men and women. Therefore, this saved the team a lot of training time. Since Obito had already taught Rin and Kakashi how to wade through water and climb trees, everyone was already quite proficient. Everyone began their own advanced training. Rin began practicing the advanced medical ninjutsu she obtained from Minato, the palm healing technique. Meanwhile, at Minato's request, Kakashi blindfolded himself and relied solely on his sensory abilities to evade attacks and engage in combat. Meanwhile, Obito finally obtained the training method for the Flying Thunder God technique. Unlike his previous life, where he couldn't even get started, in this life, he mastered in less than half a month how to use his own chakra to imprint the Flying Thunder God seal, and how to use the seal to perform reverse summoning. Rin and Kakashi had practiced these two steps at first, but soon found them too difficult. Even if they managed to complete them, it took too long and they couldn't apply them in actual combat, so they gave up for the time being. Only Obito persisted until the third step without falling behind. Even Minato praised his speed of progress. Obito, you did very well. The time you took to complete the first two steps was not much different from mine, but Minato's expression turned grave. The most difficult part of the Flying Thunder God technique isn't the first two steps, but the third. Minato pulled out a Flying Thunder God kunai and continued explaining. When you're very close, you can easily sense the Flying Thunder God seal you've placed, and you can also use the seal to perform reverse summoning. But what if you're far away? It's even still moving, like this. Whoosh! Minato threw his Flying Thunder God kunai. The kunai sped forward and finally stuck into a large tree in the distance. Obito seemed lost in thought. Indeed, it's not difficult to perform reverse summoning using the Flying Thunder God mark when you're very close and stationary. With diligent practice, you can always do it, just like the three bodies technique. However, as this Flying Thunder God mark begins to move, even to a very far place, the difficulty of reverse channeling instantly goes from easy to hellish, because all the rote memorization becomes meaningless. Only by truly feeling the imprint, and never letting it slip out of one's own perception at any moment, can one truly understand it. Minato continued, Obito, you've noticed too, haven't you? Once the Flying Thunder God seal activates, or even from a distance, sensing and controlling it becomes incredibly difficult. It took me a year to achieve this. I hope you're mentally prepared. Obito nodded, sighing. In my opinion, the first two steps were already quite difficult. I thought I was already doing well by mastering them in half a month, but I didn't expect Minato-sensei to have taken even less time than me. However, this third step, Obito also took out a specially made kunai, marked it with his own seal, and then threw it into the distance. He closed his eyes and began to sense. Minato shook his head slightly. No need to rush. Starting with this step right away is too difficult. Let's begin with a 5-meter range, focusing on achieving perception within that range first, and then try to extend it little by little. However, before Minato could finish speaking, Obito opened his eyes. Minato-sensei, I can clearly sense the mark one left when I threw it, both during its flight and now that it has stopped in the distance. If I complete the reverse channeling, will I be able to teleport there? It's normal not to notice it, no rush. Minato instinctively tried to comfort him, but immediately he was horrified. What, Obito? You're saying you can clearly sense the presence of the mark? You're not lying to me? Minato turned to look at the kunai that Obito had thrown, which had been stuck in a tree even further away than the kunai he had thrown. If you can truly sense it, you can try using reverse psychic abilities, but because of the great distance, unless your spatial talent is exceptionally outstanding, I suggest taking it one step at a time. After all, you can't become fat overnight. But before Minato could finish speaking, Obito's figure had already disappeared, reappearing in the distance at the spot where Obito had just thrown the kunai. For a moment, Minato's eyes widened in disbelief. What he considered the most difficult step, a step that even he needed a year to master, seemed as simple as eating and drinking to Obito. Episode 40 Kakashi keeps throwing things randomly into the Kamui dimension. Obito slowly pulled out the special kunai that Minato had prepared for him. After completing the first two steps, he felt he was close to mastering the Flying Thunder God technique. The final step of Flying Thunder God is remarkably similar to that of his Kamui, both involving sensing space and moving to the corresponding location. Furthermore, Flying Thunder God requires a physical imprint as a bridge, but his Kamui skips even that step. In essence, Kamui is superior to Flying Thunder God technique. It is a more advanced space-time ninjutsu than Flying Thunder God technique, a fact even Minato himself acknowledged. Therefore, what seemed like the most difficult step to Minato was actually an ability that Obito had used countless times in his previous life, making it as simple as eating and drinking. Obito is now even considering whether he can skip the step of having to use the Flying Thunder God mark to move and just teleport out of thin air like Kamui. However, this is not so easy to achieve. Both the second Hokage and Minato were geniuses, but in the end, they were unable to accomplish it. He wants to continue developing his abilities, and he'll likely need Kamui's help. So, should he capture a white Zetsu as soon as possible and trade it with Orochimaru? Only after receiving interstitial cell transplantation can one use their eyes without any worries, making many things much easier. Just as Obito was pondering this, Minato couldn't help but laugh. Obito, I thought that even if you could learn the Flying Thunder God technique, it would be years later. I didn't expect your talent to be even more terrifying than I imagined. I thought the most difficult step was over in an instant, but you mastered the Flying Thunder God technique at the age of 9. Even the second Hokage would probably find that unbelievable. Next, it'll be about putting it into practice. I'll give you special training until you're proficient, but that's a story for later. Squad 7, assemble. Minato shouted. Kakashi and Rin, who were training nearby, gathered around. Rin asked with great concern, Minato-sensei, how's your training with Obito going? Are you having problems in the third stage? Kakashi also showed a curious expression. He knew all too well how difficult it was to learn the Flying Thunder God technique, even he couldn't master it. He wondered how far Obito could learn it. Minato gave a wry smile. Perhaps, maybe, just maybe Obito has already fully mastered the Flying Thunder God technique. What? Rin and Kakashi stared at each other, their faces filled with disbelief. You learned it already? Kakashi felt like he was in a dream, everything seemed so unreal. Seeing this, Minato could only laugh and say, Rin, Kakashi, I don't believe it either. I feel like I'm dreaming, but it's true. I was just as startled as you guys were. However, now that Obito has even mastered the Flying Thunder God technique, it's time for us to take it a step further. Go further? Rin and Kakashi were taken aback, then realized what to say. Even Rin's breathing became rapid. Minato-sensei, are you saying we can undertake more advanced missions? Lately, we've been doing the most basic, low-level tasks which are getting really boring. Rin and Kakashi both want to improve. Minato nodded. Good, we've accumulated enough D-rank missions to qualify for C-rank missions. I'll report to the Hokage later. Starting tomorrow, the rank of our missions will be upgraded. Is that so? Kakashi perked up a bit. Finally, he could return to his usual mission level. Alright, Obito, Rin, Kakashi, that's all for today. You can take a break and relax. Many C-rank missions require leaving the village, some even involving trekking through mountains and rivers, which can take 10 days to half a month. Make sure you're prepared for that. Minato solemnly reminded him. Everyone nodded, and then Minato vanished in an instant. After Minato left, Rin and Kakashi looked at Obito. Obito was somewhat confused. Why are you all staring at me like that? Rin asked. Obito, haven't you been traveling the ninja world for over 10 years? You should have plenty of experience in this area, right? Recalling his past life, Obito smiled wryly. In my past life, I was single-mindedly focused on realizing the Eye of the Moon plan. I usually slept in a secluded cave, without even preparing a bed. I would just lie down and fall asleep. I do have experience with living outdoors, but it doesn't seem quite suitable for our team, does it? A hint of sadness flickered in Rin's eyes. Those days passed by so long. Obito, you really suffered. You can't live like this in this life. At least you could move some beds or something to sleep in the Kamui dimension. It's so safe there, you wouldn't have to worry about being carried off by wild beasts while you're asleep. Obito chuckled, then looked at Kakashi with a strange expression. You'd have to ask Kakashi about that. He kept throwing things into the Kamui dimension later on, things like limb-severing bombs and kunai. I'm afraid I'll sleep in there and get blown up for no reason. Lin chuckled. Because Obito had explained the power of the dual Kamui, she knew that Kakashi's Kamui in his previous life was for teleporting objects. Obito pondered for a moment and said, however, Rin's idea is quite good. If I could transplant Hashirama's cells and use Kamui without any side effects, the Kamui dimension could indeed become a secret base for us. It would be excellent for both wilderness survival and logistical support. For now, let's use the ceiling scrolls to bring more food and tents. That way, it'll be more comfortable when we're out and about. I'm starting to admire Yamato's abilities. That 3 rooms, 1 living room technique is really useful. Kakashi, looking embarrassed, said, Obito, do you know how expensive ceiling scrolls are? Especially large capacity ones. Using them to store everyday items seems a bit too extravagant. Obito recalled Fugaku Uchiha's face. Don't worry, it's just some ceiling scrolls. I can get them. So, from now on, Rin will prepare medical supplies. I'll prepare the ceiling scrolls, and Kakashi, you can prepare the food. To be honest, I'm craving your fish. Rin smiled and said, no problem. I'll prepare healing medicine and some soldiers' rations before we go out. Kakashi replied helplessly, we're going out on a mission, not to enjoy ourselves. Just bring some dry rations. Obito immediately objected, no way. If we can eat well, why should we eat poorly? I can endure hardship myself, but I can't let Rin suffer. Rin smiled as she looked at Obito, her face turning red. At least with her around, Obito could learn to enjoy life. Kakashi, looking helpless against Obito, said, fine, it's just a few fish, I'll cook them. But a few fish aren't enough for us and Minato-sensei. We also need to make some bento boxes, which I'm not good at. Obito suddenly seemed to remember something, and his expression turned somewhat somber. Rin noticed this keenly and asked softly, Obito, what's wrong? Did you remember something bad again? Obito smiled wryly. Minato-sensei will prepare the bento boxes. In our past life, we always got to eat delicious bento boxes whenever we went out. Lin's eyes lit up. She had never been able to resist delicious food. She could actually make bento boxes, but she was also very curious to see what Minato-sensei's bento would look like. But Minato-sensei is such a carefree person. Would he really be able to make delicious bento boxes? Rin couldn't help but wonder, and then something suddenly occurred to her. Immediately, her face turned somewhat bitter. Obito, did your teacher's wife make the bento? Obito didn't speak, keeping his head down in silence. The atmosphere became somewhat oppressive for a moment. Kakashi stepped forward and patted Obito on the shoulder. So in this life, Obito, you can't do such a beastly thing again. Otherwise, not only will your teacher's wife not forgive you, but Rin and I will never forgive you again.